go. All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our September 20th meeting. We have a moment of silence that we start with, but I know a lot of people have been watching the news, and our community, in particular, one of our volunteer firemen and his wife lost their battle to COVID. And I think very often we see these statistics in the newspaper or on TV, and we fail to realize that there are people behind each one of those statistics. And until you actually know one of those statistics. So as we go into our moment of silence, I want you to think about their family, the children, 4 children now that are orphaned, and all those others that have been affected by COVID and the other tragedies that have occurred over the last year or so. So please join me in thinking about those families, that family, for a moment of silence. Thank you. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Once again, I want to thank everybody for coming. My understanding is we have 2 planning department employees. Where are they? 2 new ones. Just say hello to everybody. Please state your name. All right. Welcome.
Hi, Nathan.
All right. Well, welcome aboard. Good to see that we're expanding our planning department. I know you've all been a little bit busy, and you can see from our today's agenda how busy we are. I have a few other comments. First of all, thank you, Commissioner Bales, for pitching in last 2 weeks ago.
You're welcome.
She had a short meeting. I have to have the long meeting, but I appreciate you doing that. Also, many of you know the mayor sits on the Metropolitan Transit Commission, and for, 4 years, we've been talking about trying to get some bus stop enhancements, either a shelter or even a bench. And just heard from our town attorney, 3 bus stop enhancements are moving forward. It is on our agenda for Wednesday's meeting for the MTC. So maybe we actually have something signed by the next month or 2. And also to continue to look for more areas where we can enhance our bus stops. Colonial Pipeline. I have been in touch with them on multiple occasions. We've requested them to come and give an update. I know staff has been in touch with Colonial Pipeline as well. And at this point, they are just not coming. I don't know how to say it. I've asked them to give updates. We know they have a website. We know we're linked into their website, but we still wanted to have some representative from Colonial Pipeline here, in particular tonight or a couple weeks ago, and they're just not coming. So I don't know how else to say it. We've asked them, and hopefully they'll reconsider at some point in the near future. And then I guess I don't want to be too much of a downer tonight, but I want to talk about something very serious that's occurred in our community, our greater community. And I'm sure everybody's aware of the tragedy that occurred over Labor Day weekend, where multiple shootings occurred throughout Charlotte, where a 3-year-old young man was killed, as well as a 16-year-old who was enrolled at Hopewell. those are tragic. I mean, there's no doubt that there is a community issue that's circulating within Mecklenburg County. What I do have a problem with, and I've talked to both the North Meck High School principal as well as the Hopewell principal, this was not necessarily something that was happening from the schools. It was something that was happening within neighborhoods. The 3 21-year-olds were arrested because of this incident. They are looking for teenagers. My understanding is those teenagers may have been enrolled at 1 or 2 or 3 of the schools, and yet they were not attending. I would rather the media focus on what good is going on in those high schools. In particular, Hopewell has 2 National Merit finalists, scholarship finalists, and I'd rather them be sitting outside Hopewell and North Meck looking forward to interviewing one of them as opposed to trying to get parents in the carpool line and see what is concerning them. So it's something that's happening within the overall community. It wasn't necessarily happening within our schools. So our school teachers have enough hard things to do and deal with COVID and a number of other things. So I think we need to take a step back when we hear these news stories and what really is the effect of what was going on. So, having said that, Commissioner Bales.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of items here tonight. First of all, I would like to thank the Daughters of the American Revolution Post for the Alexandrianic Post. They came out on Friday at Town Hall and read the Constitution on Constitution Day, and it was a wonderful ceremony to be a part of, and I just want to take a moment and thank them for coming out and doing that for our community. And in regards to my economic development report, the EDC is currently working 53 active projects. Out of those 53, and those 53 cover Davidson, Cornelius, and Huntersville, Huntersville has 32 active projects happening currently. So we look forward to having more announcements here in the future for opportunities to not only live in our wonderful community, but to work in our wonderful community and not have to leave our borders. In addition to that, I have a speed networking event planning session tomorrow that I will be working with the EDC, their workforce director, development manager, and myself will be meeting with Huff, Hopewell, and North Meck and their CTE programs to be planning the speed networking event that we will be doing this fall, or hopefully this fall. And in addition to that, I have happy news. I would like to let the board know that Haley Neasley, who works with the Lake Norman EDC, and her husband Taylor just welcomed their daughter, Hollins, into the world on Friday. So I will forward out those pictures to you. She is adorable, and it is wonderful to see some good news happening in the world today. Mr. Mayor, that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Boone?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's meeting. Thank you for coming out. From the Lake Norman Chamber of Commerce, Tuesday, September 21st, the Chamber's Diversity Council Annual Champions of Diversity Awards will be held virtually for 2021. The program starts at 3 p.m. Please contact the Chamber for the Zoom codes for this presentation. This Friday at 10:30, the Chamber will have a virtual Focus Friday. Congressman Ted Budd will be there. Congressman Budd, who represents the 13th District, is also a candidate for the U.S. Senate seat held by Senator Burr. A quick reminder from the Chamber is hosting a candidate forum for all 3 towns in North Mecklenburg County. All 3 towns will have this forum in their town halls. The Huntersville forum will be October 5th from 7 to 9 p.m. The event will be held live, also virtual, and recorded. COVID protocols required by Mecklenburg County will be observed. From the Huntersville Fire Department, the fire department is still having their fundraiser. They are selling t-shirts at station number 1 for $15 each while supplies last. The proceeds will help 2 nonprofits in our area, the Purple Heart Homes and the 22 Project. The funds will be donated in the month of November. From the Huntersville Police Department, if you see something, say something. Dial 911. Please take your valuables when you go into your homes and lock your cars. I think Major Graham would agree with me that if everybody locked their cars, we could cut crime quite a bit in Huntersville. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's my report.
Thank you. Commissioner Hines.
Thank you all for being here. It's a big crowd tonight. I'll give you a quick update from CRTPO, but let me take you back a step. With COVID, COVID really wrecked the finances of NCDOT. In April of last year, there were no cars on the road pretty much, so they were losing a lot of revenue. NCDOT hit their floor, their cash floor of about $345 million in the bank. So once that happens, they can't do anything. They suspended all projects. And Huntersville had a lot of projects that were halted, engineering stopped, and those kind of things. So one of the things they do every year or so is they prioritize projects across the state. And as CRTPO, Mecklenburg County, Union, and Iredell, we get our list of all of our projects and we prioritize those. The P6 list that was ongoing right now has been halted, primarily due to funding shortfalls, cost overruns, just the pure cost of everything going up from right-of-way, utility relocations, and those kind of things. What they're doing now is we're going back and looking at P3, 4, and 5, and all of those projects, and we're going to reprioritize those based off when we get funding needs. When we get funding, we can allocate those to the most highly ranked projects in our area. So to give you some update, Highway 73 was supposed to get started in 2022-23. That project was stopped, and now they're going to restart it in 25 or 26. Couple good things, you'll see that the Main Street project is under construction in downtown Huntersville. That's a town project along with the state. And then today they started on the Gilead Road and Statesville interchange. That's 2 projects. The bridge is going to be a diverging diamond. They started on that. That'll probably take years for that to be completed. And then also the Statesville and Gilead Road is another project. They're working simultaneously, same contractor. So please be patient when you're going through that area. We want to keep all those workers safe, and that's just part of the progress of Huntersville as we continue to grow and more people are coming here. That's a state project. They're working on it. Thankfully, they finally got started on that project. So look for all those orange cones and be careful. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Only 3 years late,
That's right.
but that's still less time than getting bus stop enhancements. Commissioner Munger.
Feel your pain on the bus stop enhancements. Pretty short tonight. I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. Wednesday, I will be meeting with Mecklenburg County government officials and various other town officials for a discussion on farmland preservation. And as always, if you have the opportunity to give, please consider supporting our nonprofits such as Angels and Sparrows, Caterpillar Ministries, Bags of Hope, Hope House, and Ada Jenkins. And that is all.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Phillips?
Yes. Hi. Ada Jenkins update on October 5th, starting at 6 p.m. at Boatyard Eats. There will be a benefit concert. This event is for those 21 and up and will feature complimentary food stations and a cash bar. Entertainment will be provided by Mo Money, Southside Station, and the MC of the night is comedian Andy Forrester. Tickets are available online at adajenkins.org and will not be available at the door. Tickets are $100 each, and there are table sponsorship opportunities as well. A direct need Ada Jenkins has right now is Lyft and Uber gift cards, which they use to help people get to a doctor's appointment. You can drop those off at Ada Jenkins at any time that they are open. And then a not so happy update is the Charlotte Met Animal Care and Control is at maximum capacity for dogs right now. If you're not in a place to adopt a dog right now, please consider fostering or even doing a staycation Staycations, for those who aren't aware, are when they pull dogs or cats out of the shelter for 3 to 5 days, and you can bring them in your home so they can decompress. That opens up shelter space for the temporary holds and just make sure that we are staying on the path of being recognized as a no-kill shelter. So if you're interested in doing that, you can check out their website, or you can call 311, or just reach out to me. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Walsh?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Huntersville Regional Chamber will have their monthly member meeting tomorrow. Pet Paradise off of Browns Mill Road will be hosting this meeting, and it starts at 12 p.m. From Parks and Recreation, join them for Latino Night on Friday, October 1st. The event will take place in Veterans Park and include bands, food trucks, and beverages. The event will be open from 5 to 9. Visit Lake Norman will host the Bassmaster Southern Open this coming week from September 23 through 25. 200 boats and 400 anglers from 27 states, as well as Japan and South Africa, will fish out of Blythe Landing. And for the first time, the final day of fishing on September 25th will be broadcast live on Fox Sports 1. This marks the 5th time VLN has hosted an open event. That's it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, all right, well, thank you. Any questions of staff this time? Okay. Before we go into our presentation, we had one person sign up for public hearing. To no surprise, Ms. B.J. Caldwell.
As I make my way, good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Please state your name and address. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, Betty B.J. Caldwell, 14521 New Haven Drive in Huntersville. And a report has been submitted to the town's elected officials. It is an in-depth history of Pottstown and the East Huntersville communities. And the purpose is to show how this 110-year-old area is significant and its residents are being erased or squeezed out. I and other members of the Pottstown Preservation for Change Committee is looking forward to working with you so that we can bring about a change. And I just want to say one other little thing. Who we are. The Pottstown Preservation Committee for Change, a multicultural group of homeowners living in Pottstown, East Huntersville, and New Haven Park, who feel they are expendable and not valued as humans. We want to work together to bring about hope and a positive change that will impact and strengthen each segment of our community. And it's a place where any resident can be treated with dignity, feel valued, respected, and whose dream is to catch the spirit of community so that he or she will be motivated to invest their time and talent in their neighborhoods. And there is hope, and I came up with this acronym for hope. H, help. O, open. P, people. E, eyes. So there's a lot of hope in Pottstown and East Huntersville, and I am here today to say that the area is worth saving even though it has been gentrified, which means that more people than the original black folk, descendants of the enslaved who were originally relegated to that space, we've been inundated, we're outnumbered, and maybe outgunned, I don't know. But anyway, that's a joke, that's a joke. But anyway, help Pottstown and East Huntersville communities. They are worth saving, so will you join in our effort? Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, anybody else who had signed up for the quasi-judicial hearing, which that'll be later in our agenda. All right, we have a presentation from Edifice and Creech on a preliminary design phase for the new town hall. Who's here for that? Come on up. Please introduce yourselves.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to be here with you this night. My name is Brent Green. I'm with Creech & Associates.
Good evening. Mike Carlisto. I'm with Edifice.
Tim Bender with Edifice.
And a Huntersville resident, right?
So once again, thank you for the opportunity to share our progress and through the advanced planning stage of design. We're going to move through our agenda for the evening. Perfect. So our agenda for the evening is relatively straightforward. We're going to reintroduce the project. I know that it's familiar to all of you, but we felt like, based on the venue, it would be worth some restating. We're going to share with you the public input and a summary of that we received through a couple of different sources. Then ultimately, we want to work through our advanced planning summary and talk about the solutions that our team has worked for in presenting to you this evening. I think you've already met the three of us, so maybe I'll skip the pleasantries with that particular slide. So again, reminding us of the project, this is the proposed 3 to 4 story building, plus or minus 36,000 square feet, proposed currently on the corner of Old Statesville and Gilead. I won't bore you with reading all of these. You've had an opportunity to see them. I will highlight a couple of key elements: the allowance for a flexible community room space and enlarged boardroom to accommodate meetings like this for larger community and regional meetings. Importantly, and to note as the last bullet there, that we recognize the total project budget is $14 million, and that is an all-in inclusive number. So again, some familiar background. Why build on this site? I think that's information that you might be familiar with. The town certainly owns the land. The site is pad ready. It does complete the vision of the 2006 downtown master plan to sort of co-locate with the town center and the parking deck. It does concentrate the town assets in one location at the core of town, and does offer some ease of phasing with the existing town hall remaining untouched and operational throughout construction. And again, we recognize that because of the investment that's already been made on this site by the town, there's an approximate savings of $4 million in continuing the project as proposed. I think in terms of our schedule, we're at that critical juncture where we've completed the advanced planning phase, and we're ready to move into schematic design. With the acknowledgement of the concept that you all would like us to pursue further. So we're in this 2-week review and approval period. I think we are going to have a second public workshop in the fall after we've moved through the schematic design phase, and then ultimately working towards a completion in fall of 2023. Okay, so that's the project intro. We'll move into the public input summary. So we facilitated 2 different venues for public input. We had an in-person public workshop, followed by a 30-day period open for an online survey. And you see there that we received a wide range of comments, as you might expect in offering that type of venue. Everything from revamping downtown to jokingly putting government in the trailers to let's just not build anything at all. And I think that speaks to a pretty wide cross-section of input. You see there, we had 25 attendees in person. We had about 175 online responses. If you sort of, work that against the populations, we heard about from 1/3% of the population of Huntersville. The things that we wanted to focus on really are the takeaways that we've worked really hard to implement in the advanced planning that you will see in the product here coming up on the next slides. There was a lot of affinity for the building to look similar to the existing town hall and town center, so masonry, cast stone, that type of material palette. A lot of energy around maximizing the amount of plaza space and making sure that whatever scheme we move forward with facilitates that. Some fun things like our chamber space really would be nice to have windows in it. The community room really needs to be flexible and have its own access to the exterior. Certainly including designated locations for town history and art display. And then one of the things that we wanted to talk about in addition was, have you all considered the current town hall site? We know that's a topic that's come up sort of across time over the years, and that was one that we felt like that perhaps we might want to investigate one step further. And so that we could understand that notion, we did what we would call really a quick test fit. This is not anything definitive, it's just enough to validate the concept. And the idea being that, well, the lot behind is owned, there's an opportunity to perhaps create what we're calling an annex that will be an addition effectively to the rear of the building. This would imply keeping the existing town hall on the corner and its 8,000 square foot footprint. You can build 3 stories to achieve roughly the 30,000 square feet that we're contemplating across the street. We would tell you that if you went down this path, you would want to hold that 3-story mass away from the existing town hall just as a sort of deference to its mass and make those 2 sort of separate. But again, I think you see there that it does fit on the property. I think there are opportunities and challenges that are listed there for you. One of those is parking. You're taking on a campus strategy for parking, where the predominant amount of it, of course, will be in the garage across the corner. One of the other notions attached to this idea was vertical expansion. In other words, can the actual town hall be vertically expanded? And the answer to that is no. Unfortunately, the structural system is not designed to accommodate that. So any vertical expansion where the existing town hall resides will require that building to be demolished. That is not what is represented in this scheme. Okay? It will extend the construction schedule because a part of that project will be to renovate the existing building. You would build new, you'd move people over, you'd renovate, there'd be some swing space. So we're estimating that extension to last approximately 1 year. And you see there, if you're comparing it to the $14 million that we're contemplating as an all-in price for the other site, we're projecting 14.75 for this particular option. Now remember, this is test fit, so all of these are high-level numbers, but based on the information in hand, that represents a summary of the test fit for that site. So that really kind of concludes all of the public input and the ways that we looked at how we could pull those elements and implement them through design. So we're going to run through that with you this evening, and we always start these discussions with drivers, which are really just topics that inform and guide our design. One of those drivers was, should the massing be 3 or 4 stories? And I think that's one that we're certainly going to explore in concept. Where should the boardroom be? Where should the community room be? Should it be connected to the exterior? How does the public circulation work? Lobby, stairs, elevator. How does all that flow? And then really, again, how does the public access those spaces? So how we've addressed these, all of these have been addressed consistently across each option. So there will be that they have in common. As a starting point, there seemed to be a lot of interest and energy around what the 4-story scheme could offer. So that was really the one that we sort of chose to implement and study first, thinking that it might maximize plaza space. So that's what option A represents. Option A is a 4-story scheme. It is symmetrical in the main building 4-story mass. You will see that the community room is extended out to the right, and effectively the edge of it aligns with the edge of the existing town center building. So you're really sort of holding that line to define the plaza space. You have entry points on Old Statesville from the parking deck side, and as well as along a funneled arcade along the community room from the plaza. So entrances from all 3 of those points. You see the plan diagrams, and they're exactly that, diagrams. The red spaces are intended to represent the public areas like community room, chamber, and conference flexible meeting. The blue shades represent staff space, and remember, part of the design is to make sure that we're able to zone the building to sort of separate those two. And then you'll see that on the 4th floor, that notion of shell, which we've talked about from the beginning as a way of not developing or finishing all of the space as a means for building a little bit more and saving that for future growth. Okay? We've put together what typically would be white box models, but just in study, we've gone ahead and put some material on them to put them in context. So the view at the top represents a vantage point from across the corner in front of the existing building. You see the main 4-story mass articulated there with entrance from Old Statesville. You see the 2-story component in the arcade that comes out from that and really sort of acts as that edge to the plaza. Again, these are all sort of preliminary in nature, and it doesn't necessarily have to be that the answer is any one specific. In terms of the exterior, we can look at it as a kit of parts. This is option A. Okay? So we thought to ourselves, we like this idea, but there's somewhat of a contrast between the 4-story and the 2-story mass. So is there a way to accomplish this same general idea and sort of make it all into one symmetrical product? And we tested that for option, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead. In summary, option A is a 36,000 square foot total, and that is what they will all be consistently. This particular option offers you 8,000 square feet of shell and 28,000 square feet of initial build-out. We'll come back to that same metric of numbers for each one of these options. You see there before you the opportunities and challenges listed. Does anyone have any questions on this particular option, or would you like for me to go through and save it to the end?
Just go through all 3.
Perfect. So again, the idea behind option B was to take the 4-story concept and sort of push it into a 3-story symmetrical mass. So it is exactly that. It is a symmetrical mass. It does elongate the plan such that the community room and chamber extend past that edge of the town center slightly into the plaza and sort of act as an element within it. This does require the largest footprint of the 3 options, but still offers you that same entrance in the center, from both Old Statesville and the parking deck, and filtered entrances from the plaza. Here's the plan diagram. Again, it offers you that same opportunity to enter centrally, circulate vertically in a core, and then make your way to the community room or chamber, with that third floor entirely as shell, and that's that opportunity for growing into the future. The renders from the same vantage point, and you begin to see here that plaza is slightly smaller than the previous version because that footprint is a little larger, begins to sneak over closer to the corner. And otherwise, it's a pretty similar elevation in terms of a two-story entry piece off of the Old Statesville side, and it doesn't compete necessarily with the town center. So that was option B. And it's that same 36,000 square feet that we've talked about before. You'll see this one has more shell than the first one, 10,500 square feet and 25,500 square feet of build out. And that's just a ratio based on the building layout and how the floor plates shake out. Okay? So that represents option B, and we took both of those and said that, the symmetry is a wonderful notion, and, we all like to think of that in terms of what identifies civic buildings and town halls, but perhaps there's a different diagram that can still be traditional, but more closely aligns with this division between the staff space and the public space. And so that's really what's represented in option C. Option C takes that throughway movement and shifts it slightly off-center so that it aligns with sort of that existing connection from the parking deck, filters you through the lobby that runs from front to back, obviously entrances on Old Statesville, the parking garage side, and from the plaza. You see this the same diagram where the community room and the public spaces are on the left, but you can see how the staff space begins to be more contiguous, on the left. When you move into the diagrams, that also is articulated by the fact that the staff space is just more contiguous. So there's less circulation, it's just a more efficient layout because the mass responds to the program. And consistently with the other options, the upper floor is shell space. You see the renders here again. This one is held back in sight, so it aligns with the edge of the town center. It preserves the large plaza. It has a smaller piece that sort of adjuts into it. And because it's compact and efficient, we're able to sort of afford a tower on this one, which obviously is very heavily related to the existing town hall. It takes most of its cues from there. It does create a very nice, well-held plaza space. It gives the room a little bit of air and doesn't press on the connector colonnade along the town center side. It is that same 36,000 square foot yield. This one has 9,650 in shell space and 26,350 square feet of initial build out, again, relative to just the way the building layout shakes out. Yep. So I'll pause for a breath here and say, here's the comparison all on one slide. All of these options can be developed to be within our $14 million budget. And if it is your pleasure, we would love for some direction in order to decide which one of these to move forward with in study and schematic design. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. I have a couple of comments, and we'll open it up for questions from the board or comments from the board. First of all, thank you for this, and I think you incorporated a lot of what feedback I think the board had already given you, as well as the community, so thank you for that. But I do want to rehash a little bit about why now as opposed to any other time. So over 2.5 years ago, we started having a discussion on whether or not we needed a new town hall. Mr. Roberts came on board, did an analysis of what it would take to house the number of employees that we would need over the course of the next 5, 10, 15 years. Huntersville's 65,000. We will be over 100,000. So, how do we fit the number of people we have into the space we have? In addition, this board made a comment a couple of years ago that we wouldn't really proceed with spending any money on this endeavor unless we sold one or two or some portion of, some parcel that the town owns. So last year we contracted with two entities, one for 2 acres next to Discovery Place Kids for about $600,000, and two, the old police station, which is under contract, should close within the next 30 to 45 days for $1.8 million. Previously, the town had sold a number of acreage near the Waymer Center for $600,000. some small portions of previous acquisition near the Vermilion Village for well over $300,000, and the current town hall is appraised for $1.7 million. That's a total of $5.4 million of potential sales or current sales that could go towards this town hall. I've been a proponent of trying to consolidate all of our assets because why do you have them if the town doesn't need them? Let's get them sold, put them on the taxpayer rolls, and consolidate everything into one particular town hall. As I've stated numerous times, I never thought I'd be here 6 years later thinking that we needed a town hall, but I think the timing, I think fiscally, this is a good time for us. If we put $5 or $6 million down on a $14 million project, we're borrowing right now at about 1%. We're AAA rated. We are the best funded community in North Carolina. We have the resources to go ahead and move forward and do all the other things that are necessary to keep either the town safe, add greenways, sidewalks, roads, and so forth. But why else would we want to do this? Well, we're losing community space by selling the Blythe building. We could have community space where we could have voting, we could have HOA meetings, civic organizations, and then also, as the town's getting bigger, our needs are growing, and we will need more services to come from Town Hall. So for example, for a number of years, we had a veterans liaison that would come just one day a week and hopefully allow veterans to come to Town Hall as opposed to driving all the way to Mecklenburg County and back. So we could offer that service again. Social services, we're looking at the police department and potentially having a social worker on call to help with cases. Magistrate, we've talked about having a magistrate for decades, but maybe this will have a particular place where we could house the number of magistrates who we would need. We have on our agenda tonight something about the opioid settlement that we will join in with the county. These will, in order to spend some of that money, you'll need to have counseling services. Potentially we could have those services here in Huntersville as opposed to having to drive all the way down to Freedom Drive or someplace else in Charlotte. I think it's a big deal. I think it's something that's necessary. And for all these reasons, I think it's time to move forward. Now, I do want Mr. Roberts, if you can answer the question of why this land is not necessarily commercially viable. I think it's a finer point that a lot of people don't understand, but the town owns this land, and in conjunction with bonds that were issued to build the deck. So could you just quickly explain that?
Yeah, when I first came here, I think the board tried to take RFQs, RFPs on that property, and I don't think you got any offers on it. The one thing with that property is the parking deck that's behind it was financed with LOBs, local obligation bonds. So there's private use issues with that. So if I were to go, Anthony Roberts LLC were to go try to purchase that property, obviously when you go build a building on it, you got to have parking. No bank's going to finance something that you can't park. And that deck was paid for with public dollars, so it has restrictions on it. So I can't just give away parking to any entity that comes along and wants to build there. So the short answer is being able to park a private use there would be next to impossible.
All right. I've said my piece. My one question I have is how big is the chambers?
Thank you. The chamber seats 150 people and has an 11-person dais to allow for future growth, should you all head in that direction.
Thank you. All right, any questions or comments? I'm for C, so for whatever that's worth.
I get it.
Commissioner Walsh?
Yeah. One of the narratives in the community is this idea, I see up here, it says $14 million budget all in. And my wife and I have purchased 3 new homes in our lifetime, you know, new builds type of thing. And so I feel like this is the time we're kind of going in and out of the sales trailer, you know, looking at things and trying to decide. But at some point, we sat down and we picked our options, or she picked our options, and decided what we wanted and what upgrades, et cetera. And then they said, here's a number, and we signed. And now the builder, again, costs go up, it's on them. If it goes down, they make some more profit. So in this timeline, what number is that, and approximately what month is that, assuming we give some direction tonight to say, hey, we want option X?
I'm sorry, forgive me, in terms of where we are on the overall schedule?
Well, in this schedule here, so at some point, you guys will actually design it, and...
So you're referring to when we get to the guaranteed maximum price?
Correct.
All right, so,
So the guaranteed maximum price cannot be determined until you have a public competitive bid process. When that happens, that should be next winter, early spring.
Next winter, as in this coming winter,
Exactly.
or early spring? Okay. So make
So
sure we
it-
want...
To me, I always think of late winter, early spring is kind of what I'm hearing.
Gotcha. And I have a question for Mr. Roberts. Some have said that there are absolutely going to be cost overruns, et cetera, and they've compared the Main Street project as well as the rec center. And can you tell us what the difference is between this project and those?
The board has set 14 million as a budget, so the GMP, at the end of the day, we have instructed them 14 million is all we have to spend, unless a new board comes in and says, we want it to be 16, 18, 20 million, or whatever they want it to be, but $14 million is the directions that we've given them, and that's the number. So if you look back at their options, and you probably see it there, you notice there's finished square footage and unfinished square footage. So that's what so ultimately if, when they go in and design this and they come back in the winter, whatever Mike said, in the winter, they come back with those numbers, ultimately you'd have maybe slightly less finished space versus unfinished space.
Okay.
But 14 million is the number, unless the board says, a future board says otherwise. Won't be this board, because you know, a new board will be sitting here, and when that GMP comes back in the winter, there'll be new boards sitting here. If they decide to raise that number, then that's kind of up
And
to
so if we're talking about in the next few months, getting that price locked down, when we built this rec center, there was many years before we built it, correct? As well as, you know, the Main Street project took many years, so we're talking about a much shorter timeline.
Well, and this is a different process too. This process is the first, I think, design build process that the town has ever done, and there's a reason we did that.
And I just have a quick question for Ms. Huffman. We are going to be straight financing this, correct? Straight finance on the new town hall, correct?
So we have not decided, pen to paper, exactly how we do it. It would be my advice that we would finance it, and here's why. When I look at the rest of our CIP, Capital Improvement Program, there are an awful lot of streets and greenways on that. You don't have any authorized bonds available to be issued. We don't have any GO, general obligation bonds. So it would be my recommendation that you preserve your existing fund balance to fund projects that are going to be more difficult to get financing for. If you're attempting to finance a town hall, a bank doesn't mind that type of collateral because we're AAA bond rated. I cannot envision we'd never make those debt service payments, but when you issue debt, who does? So a bank is looking for good collateral. A town hall could be repossessed by a bank in the event that they had to, and that could be used as office space. A bank's not interested in greenways or roads or sidewalks as collateral because they can't repossess that and sell that to somebody else. So we have to be cognizant of what's available to be financed using what instruments. And so until we get additional GO bond funding, it would be my recommendation that you use an installment financing for this, and that's the rationale why. And
to the mayor's point, the funding right now is pretty cheap, correct?
You have items on your agenda tonight where you're issuing debt at less than 1.5%. That's I've been in local government 26 years, and it's just unprecedented. I would have said that when we were issuing debt at 2%, but theoretically, how much lower can you go?
Probably not going to get much lower, so there's probably never a better time than now. I think that's it right now.
Commissioner Hines?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation of the options. I'm more leaning in favor of option C. I think it kind of works better on that site. I think it provides a larger plaza. So when do you have to get to, like, I call it the steeple, but I guess it's not a steeple. Matches the current town hall, but the plan is if this moves forward, the current town hall will most likely not be there long term. It will be sold, redeveloped. Is there a point, or if we say option C, you're going to move forward with having this, I think you called tower on top? Will you be moving in that direction, or we have the opportunity at a later date to look at that and say, we'll change these design elements of the facade?
That's a great question, and we are in the very early phases of this. So yes, if you say go forward with option C, with the caveat that we want to take further study on this idea of tower, but that we like the plan organization. That is certainly a direction that we could respond to, certainly.
Okay. Thank you.
I just have one.
Well, anybody? Commissioner Bales?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have to say I'm a little bit surprised because I actually like option C, and I didn't think that I would. But one of the things that sticks out for me is the amount of initial staff space, which I think is critical for this new space. This was the point. Staff is on top of one another now. In addition to giving it the community space that flows out into the plaza, which I also agree, having the larger plaza space for the community, I think is a wonderful thing. I'm still a little iffy on asymmetrical. I like balance to things, so I'm still watching it, but I like the initial concept for everything that it provides.
That's very interesting. We had that exact same discussion in our shop. And again, I think that just proves the process out, that it's good to have options to evaluate. And I think the good thing about where we are in this decision point is schematic design is just still the first real phase of design. This is all pre-planning. So there's lots of time to explore this before we come back to you again with a refined option.
Okay.
Commissioner Munger?
Sure. One of the first things I look at is the number of people in this room. You wouldn't fit in the current town hall. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that you wouldn't fit in the chamber. There'd be people back into the waiting area like it used to be two years ago, and it has nothing to do with COVID specific. Assuming a non-COVID situation, you would be crowded up against the wall, someone would be leaning against the light switch, dimming the lights. We've all been there, it's happened. I've done it personally. If we built on the current site, and this is possibly a question for staff, would we move all of the existing employees that are currently on the third floor of Discovery Place Kids to the new building?
So you're saying if we build on the site they're proposing?
I'm sorry, if we built on the current town hall site. I worded that wrong.
So if we build on the current town hall site, the existing employees that are in town hall right now, what will we do with those while they're building?
The existing employees in the Discovery Place Kids building, would they come to the new town hall or would they stay there?
Stay there.
Okay, so you're gonna have employees in two different locations again.
Yes. So we would maybe move a couple over to free up some space over there because planning, as you saw some people, planning and engineering are growing. So we may move the few parks and rec staff over to wherever the new town hall is.
Okay, so again, employees crossing two intersections to get to and from meetings for
I think the key of building on the existing site is, I think you add another, I don't know, 12 or 15 parking spaces on top of what we got. So most likely, staff would probably take up all of the parking. So any type of meetings and functions and things like that, pretty much they're parking in the parking deck.
And that was my next question. There wouldn't be nearly enough parking in the existing town hall location if it were expanded to accommodate all of the staff parking and visitor parking.
Because if you look at old 2006 plans and things like that, you'll see where they had parking deck, a Discovery Place Kids type venue, and Town Hall expanding. Well, that was buying additional land on the back of the white building behind Town Hall, additional land back there, and also some land where beside me where Ralph's place is, the Italian place. So that was contemplated 15 years ago. Problem is that's more land to buy, and I know what the price is on those properties now, which are both of them combined several $1 million, and you got to build a parking deck. So to me, it just, if you're looking at all the different options that are there, whenever the town decided to move a DPK on the opposite side of the street and build a parking deck, you built 2 out of the 3 facilities you were looking to do, in my mind, when you moved it across that corner. So it made sense to me when you're looking at trying to do that plan. We moved Town Hall over there too, because then you've got everything right there so the public can do everything right there on that corner.
Additionally, if we built on the lot in front of Discovery Place Kids, to the mayor's point, I believe you said $1.8 million is the current assessed value of the current town hall?
Yeah, 1.7.
1.7, sorry about that. So that's revenue we would lose. In addition to that, if a commercial entity came in and decided that they wanted to build a business, take current town hall, take the building behind, bring in revenues, tax revenues, that's opportunity cost in addition to the actual upfront money. So over a period of time, we would continue to lose money if we didn't sell off that particular portion as well. Would that be fair?
Yeah, as long as the government owns it, it pays no taxes.
Right. So, from everything I can see, I mean, we absolutely have to build in front of Discovery Place Kids. It's the only sensible solution. It's the most cost-effective solution. And in terms of what I've seen, I tend to be in agreement with almost everyone who has spoken up to this point. Option C, I do enjoy. I like the idea of the top on there that's similar to our current town hall. I like that transitional idea. I'm not as opposed to the asymmetrical entrance, but I won't die on that field, so that's where I'm at. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bloom?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your presentation. Could you tell me who designed the current town hall?
David Creech was the designer while with LS3P Associates.
And they're still with you?
Yes.
Okay, so the people who designed the old town hall, that'll be expensive to expand, and you can't go up on it. We're going to hire you to build a new one if this is passed. Everything that I've seen is that everybody says the parking deck's already there, $4 or $5 million to build a new parking deck. Mr. Roberts, are we making any repairs to the parking deck now?
Yes, sir.
Do you know how much that's going to cost, and what do you think the timeline for that parking deck that's the key to this whole thing?
Is the question, I don't know if I understand
What's the
question.
lifetime of the parking deck? How long do you think it'll last?
I don't know, but all that was built before me, but I would say it's probably a 30-year life on it, but.
Okay. And when you folks came up with you could build this building for $14 million, I'm sure you did your due diligence and your homework, but at the time, all these costs of raw materials and availability has gotten very hard to find. They've escalated in price. They've come down some. You're still confident that you can build this for $14 million?
I'll take this one. We are, because of the strategy that was mentioned earlier around the shell space and our ability to swing that back and forth as the market drives those costs unanticipated. So yes.
So if the costs go up, we get more shell space and people aren't finished, okay? And then my last comment is the 2 acres is private use would be impossible to develop. Why not just leave it the way it is now where people can enjoy that green space? That's all my questions.
Okay. Anybody else? Commissioner Wall, Commissioner Phillips?
The sassiest for last. So I was at the in-person thing. I think you guys did a great job. It would have been nice to see the percentage and numbers of the people who said no, because there was a vast amount of no's to a new town hall. I feel like those voices need to be heard. I spoke to a builder this week, and I think you guys would have a contingency plan. They said that it was 16 to 20 week wait right now for windows because of massive shortages. And that's if you're an established customer. Are you guys established customers that could obtain windows?
Yeah, Commissioner Phillips, yes, we can. We
Okay.
work with many vendors who are professionals in that market. And
I mean, the
same-
wait still is just insane. They were saying if you're not established, it was like 6 months wait plus.
What we're having to do is plan things earlier than normal because of these long lead times. So not just windows, steel, roofing insulation. We're having to price and prepare those bids a few months ahead of time so we can time those deliveries when we need them on site.
Okay.
So there's a wild science for it right now.
Okay. And then, so everybody keeps saying like cost savings, right? And it's like one of those things that like the grocery store, Kohl's or Belk, they always say like when they hand you your receipt, you save $300, but it's really like I just spent $200. So there's not like really a cost savings involved. We're still spending money. I think we should be more mindful of how we're wording that, because we're not saving anything, we're spending money. And that's just the fact of it. And then, no disrespect to you guys, I think you guys have been great, especially because I have been such, an opponent. I'm disappointed and it's no fault of you, this presentation wasn't in our agendas, because I feel like the public should have had a say in whichever one, because, it's their building. That building is going to outlast whoever's sitting up here. So I'm not in favor of any option, because I'm not in favor of building the town hall. But I do appreciate the work you guys are doing, and no hard feelings towards you guys.
Understood. Thank you.
Remember, there will be another public meeting in sometime early fall, so people have some time to weigh in. Commissioner Walsh, would you have?
Yeah, just a quick follow-up. I am also in favor of option C. And before Commissioner Hines takes off the, whatever that thing is called, what you started to describe underneath, it was light coming down and something else. What was that, in a conference area or the tower, I guess you call it?
That's interesting. Yes, we do sort of currently think of that as a unique conference space, not too dissimilar from the one at the town center. So, yes.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I was thinking we could save money, Commissioner Walsh, by removing the tower.
Well, any other questions, comments? I think you have good direction.
Yes. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate your
We'll look
feedback.
forward to having that next public meeting, wherever we can have it. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any agenda changes?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we do have an agenda change. We need to move item 9D to 9B, and then move item 9B to 9D.
Okay,
We're leaving C alone.
all right. Any other agenda changes? All right, do I have a motion for the agenda?
Motion to adopt the agenda as amended?
Second?
Okay, any discussion? All right. All those in favor? All right, that's 6-0 for the agenda. All right, we have a few public hearings tonight. Do we have any planning board members here tonight?
Frank Gammon.
Okay. All right, we'll open up 8A. We'll open up the public hearing on petition R21-06, North Creek Village Mixed Use. A request by, Magnolia Development to rezone 84 acres south of North Carolina 73 and Davidson Concord Road intersection from rural to highway commercial and transitional neighborhood development. conditional district for development consisting of 42,500 commercial square feet, 303 multifamily units, 65 attached units, and 77 detached units. Hello, Mr. Peak.
Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Sorry about your game 2 weeks ago.
We'll enter the staff report into the record.
It's even flinch.
And the property in question that you see in the black shading, it is located south of 73 and where Davidson Concord Road comes into NC 73. Get that going there. The project on the west side actually abuts Black Farm Road, and it does not abut any roads on the east side as it is presented. The red dash line that you see running through here is a future thoroughfare. You could see that as the extension of Davidson Concord Road moving south. Overlaying some aerial, you can see a little clearer the pink line moving through the middle of this. That is the future thoroughfare. Of course, you can see some of the existing Black Farm, Raymond Church over here, and then 73 there. This does represent the northern boundary of Huntersville in this particular location. So the request is for just a smidge over 84 acres. It is all in the area in yellow. It is all currently zoned rural, rural district. The proposal is to rezone to two zones, highway commercial conditional district, and then traditional neighborhood development, urban, which is a distinction, would be also indicated. And the proposed use, as summarized by the mayor in his introduction, is for 303 multifamily apartments, 65 attached units, which I apologize, that says paired villas, and that is supposed to say townhomes. That is not a duplex, it is a townhome setup. And then 77 detached units, as well as 42,500 square feet of commercial. And so the area in yellow and those uses put together would have a density of 5.3 units for this proposal. So when you look in the 2040 community plan and the land use pattern that's going on, and I'm going to get to that in just a second, but what I think is very important for the board to understand is that there is already an approved project that is well over 10 years old. It was approved under the name of Huntersville East. It is now being developed under it's split, and you have what is called North Creek Commercial and North Creek Residential. The commercial part is located here, and again, for orientation purposes, north is now to the left. So this commercial area here will have a grocery store and then several outbuildings that will be commercial and in nature. Behind that are townhomes and then some single-family homes. Now again, the areas in white in the middle are approved. They're vested, and they are moving through the review process, should be breaking ground relatively soon. So we're talking about the yellow area, but what I've got on the right here is to show you that what do these two pieces together represent? And that will lead into the community plan discussion. You can see at the top the Huntersville East project, which was about 60 acres, has the ability to provide 181,000 square feet. I don't believe that is what is being proposed, but it's shy of that, but that would be the max. And then you can see there are 89 attached townhomes and 36 detached. So you've got 125 total units for a density of 2. And one of the rationale that the board used, as well as the community plan back in that day, was that all of the intensity and density, if you will, the commercial, was up at the intersection of 73 and Davidson Concord and the future thoroughfare running south. And then as you moved away from that intensification, you got into townhomes, and then you stepped down into single family. And so by the time you got down to the outer edge of the project where the creeks come together, you had almost approximated the rural zoning density. And so that is sort of the land use philosophy that led to the approval of that project. In this particular project, the 84 acres, you now are adding to the 181 possible square feet, another 42.5. Okay, that's not a significant amount, but when you add it to the whole, you can draw your own conclusion on that. The additional apartments will be 303 apartments, and then you would have 65 townhomes, 77 detached. So now you've got 445 in total for the area in yellow. And then at the bottom, you can see where everything comes together. 224,000 square feet in total, 303 apartments, 154 attached, 113 detached, for 507 total units with a density of 3.96. There is a fair amount around the two creeks of area that is really undevelopable. So there's some open space there to help. So let's look at the 2040 plan and try to tie these together. You can see the red oval represents approximately from the western edge of Black Farm to down at where the creeks come together, to splitting the difference almost to Rama Creek, which is right about here, all the way up to 73 represents the site. And within that, you can see that there is a circle which denotes an activity center. And so the definition of an activity center comes from our 2040 plan, and it basically speaks to a compact, walkable, mixed-use center that moves, in terms of intensity, it steps down as it gets to what's around it. And so on the left, you can see the synopsis of what rural conservation is. Now, I just mentioned that all the area around this 84 acres is zoned rural, as well as the 84 acres in question. And the 2040 plan calls for this area to stay rural in nature. Now, our zoning ordinance allows for 0.9 units an acre, and a lot of open space, very limited or no opportunity for non-residential. But the activity center that is called for very specifically really encourages mixing all kinds of housing types, all kinds of commercial, office, etc. So focusing in that area, right there at those future thoroughfares where they're coming together, is absolutely supported by the 2040 plan. I think the distinction becomes sort of the rest of the elements, the intensity, if you will, and how are they transitioning down to the rural. So those are going to be kind of the comments and the questions that we'll have as we go forward. This is really just a blow up. You can see that the activity center, as the 2040 plan calls for, is really looking for about 40,000 square feet of commercial. I mentioned that they're proposing 42.5, but again, remember that the activity center already has quite a bit. So that's background information. It's not before you, but it has a relevancy. So we can come back to any of these descriptors if you'd like, but just wanted to sort of do a quick breakdown. This chart in the middle is the one that I just went over with the three components. The old project, the vested project, the new one before you, and then the total. And so what we thought we would do was sort of go around and break down the project into some smaller sub-areas. Now, the blue picture, or the blue color here, is the vested project, and this light green color here, or yellow, is also vested. And you can see the call-outs of where their densities are. And you can see that you went from 4.9, almost 5 up here, down to just barely over 2. And again, as I mentioned, around the edges, you would be at 0.9. So it was moving in the good direction. So the project here, if you look on Black Farm Road, you're over 2.5, located in the pink, which is mostly single family and some townhomes along the creek. You get into the orange area here, and you've got some single family, which is right at 1.5. Again, less than its neighboring project that was approved. And then you get to the townhomes, you got 2.7. Again, remember that there are some creeks in there that are helping with the open space. So I think it's safe to say that the pink, the blue, and the orange are really not pushing boundaries too much. They're coming away from the activity center. I did fail to mention previously that you could see that there is a circle that is drawn in here. Now that's the approximate illustrative boundary of an activity center, but it is by no means the borders of property, and it was not drawn that way. It is an approximation, and it can morph as a project were to come before you. So, but one of the subzones that you can sort of need to take a stronger look at is where the apartments are. And the apartments are over almost 17 and a half units per acre. Now, for an apartment project, I think that's a sliding scale of whether that would be a problematic density or not. But the point to make here is, while it is within that activity center circle, it is right on the edge of the rezoning potential, and you've got rural over here at 0.9. So that's a pretty jarring transition. And if that type of density next to each other is going to be palatable, then I think what the community plan would want is good buffers and good transitions. And there's a lot of ways to do that. You can do that with distance, you can do it with something, buffering. We talk about tree save, landscaping, et cetera. So there's a lot of ways that we could explore doing that, and staff is doing that with the applicants almost on a daily basis. So I do want to point out very clearly that there is no development on the east side of the creek, so it would be set aside as common open space. We would hope that it is purely undisturbed and tree safe. That is not clear, so we would ask that the applicants clarify all of that. I do also want to point out that the distance from the edge of the property that's proposed to rezone to the first apartment building is over 230 feet, I believe. So again, you do have some distance. Hopefully there will be some vegetation and some non-development, if you will, on that edge. But the question I think that the board will still need to work through is 17 units going into 0.9 is again just a significant number. So moving forward, again, just wanted to show you that the vested project is just over 2 in its totality, because again, the commercial is not representing any units. There are not a whole lot of other projects in the immediate vicinity, but you do have some residential projects, and they have mostly stayed close or not too far from the TR or the R. You've got, right there at that 1.5 or under 2 is about what you're seeing in the vicinity of this particular project. So as far as transportation goes, the TIA is really still in the works. There has been review by our staff, and we understand that there will be an updated version coming in probably today or tomorrow. So we do not have a detailed report to share with you about the TIA, obviously very critical. But the project, as you can see, it only has access to 73 or to Black Farm as proposed. There would not be any connectivity to the south or to the east as it currently is proposed or stands. There are some stubs, and we can go through that for future development. But the lion's share of all of that development is going to be going to 2 locations. CMS report is shown here. This is the 3rd version of the plan, and I have reached out to CMS from the first one to this one. So this is updated as of today. And so I will tell you that the needle didn't move much from the first version to the 3rd. That's not really relevant to say. But you can see in the gray box, this is really, I think, the only one that distills down is this is the impact to the surrounding schools that this project would be served by. That's information for you. The recommendation here is that we are offering tonight the issues at hand and some of the key components that we need to address. We are not making a recommendation at this point because we've had a lot of conversations since the preparation for tonight's hearing. And as you all know, we have a lock-in period with the plan set, and so we can't make changes leading up to tonight. But we have had those dialogue. I've been working with the applicant. I can tell you that many of the initial concerns have been removed, but we still have some that we need to work through. The applicant during their presentation may shine a spotlight on some of that, but we are not offering a recommendation tonight because I don't believe that we have even their final version of the plan in front of us. But we again are happy to try to answer any of your questions. So I just want to quickly move through sort of the areas of concern at the moment. I've already given you sort of the larger overarching concern about the 2040 plan and the consistency there, and then we'll go into some more site-specific, if you will. I do have some blow-ups here that we can refer to as needed. They basically just represent a break of this would be the northern area, and this would be the southern area, and I can help define those as needed. One of the issues that I've already touched on is sort of those buffers and what is proposed, the nature of them. The buffers in the yellow represent 50 feet of technically a buffer. That does not mean that is the only separation between the adjoining property and the proposed uses, but it is defined that way. So it's a 50-foot buffer in the yellow. The orange is a 40-foot buffer, and the pink would be 30-foot buffer. Again, very clear, they are over the minimums that the ordinance would ask for at 20. But, again, moving into are they in the appropriate places, and are they the top box also speaks to the nature of those buffers. Are they disturbed? Are they to be replanted? these types of questions need to be clarified. The T&DU that's being asked for the apartments specifically, well, all of the residential is looking for this zoning designation. And to be honest, the single family down to the south doesn't really need the T&DU, but I think that for simplicity's sake, they were looking to keep everything together. But they're looking to have about 83% attached units. As you know, our ordinance would normally look at about 30%. But to get to a T&D district, you see the definition there, you're looking to provide a neighborhood which is structured on a very fine pedestrian-friendly network, very interconnected. The streets and the public spaces, the walkable, as well as the automobile, are all given equal footing. There's a mixture of housing types and prices. There's civic and community buildings right next to stores, offices, workplaces, etc. So this balance of uses and this mix, which is very, very important to that zone, I think one of the questions before the board ultimately will be, has that been achieved? Is that being represented in what's proposed? There are some issues with the block length and the average perimeter of all of these blocks due to the way that they do or do not have public streets. It's kind of the way they're calculated on a block level. And so we've seen quite a few variations on this, and we need to see a little bit more to conclude where they stand, and then we can weigh in on whether they're complying with the aspects of that zone. Just a couple of other items here. Building elevations are something that we need to see through the T&DU, and the CD rezoning is typical of what the board wants to see. And so we would not necessarily need to see single-family housing, but for the commercial, the multifamily, and the attached units, this is something that we would normally have provided. Now, there are a few illustrative plans that we have been shown, and I believe the applicants may show them tonight, but to see each of the public street frontages is something that we're still looking for, or at least something that's very, very typical of what they're all going to be. There are some alternative frontages that are being proposed, and what that means is, as you know, our ordinance compels the buildings to be on a public street, but we do allow alternative frontages on urban open spaces. A greenway has been batted around as 3 of the apartment buildings would front on a greenway, but the setup of that greenway is not quite there as we would interpret and recommend to you. So, but we've talked with the applicants about it. I think that they're looking to do that to a satisfactory degree, and so we expect that will be a non-issue, but again, speaking to what we have before us. On-street parking is required. The apartments, the townhomes, and any of the lots under 50 feet, these are situations where they're going to need to provide on-street parking, and they don't have an on-street parking cross-section. So in several sections, there may need to be some augmentation to the plan. The parking lot screening, again, this is just can be noted away, but wherever you've got a parking lot of any size on a public street, it needs to be screened. I believe the applicants are very willing to do that. Just needs to be noted as such. I've already mentioned the alternative frontages. I won't belabor that. The pedestrian circulation. Again, going back to why is the T&DU there, and what is it trying to create? And so making sure that pedestrian connections are in the right places, are creating those networks, aren't putting you into the middle of a large parking field and just sort of abandoning you. Completing the loops, as it were. All of that is very important. In the commercial areas, there's a lot of drive-through areas that are quite confusing, and a pedestrian flow is not present through there. But these things can be provided, so we're working with the applicant on that. There is a cell tower that currently exists on the western portion of the project, and typically we would see a 200-foot setback from a cell tower. We just went through this with the project on Eastfield Road. However, they are not proposing to provide such a setback. I believe that they would be offering up an ordinance modification to you. We don't have that. But if they're able to provide that the tower was engineered to collapse upon itself, and their setback is reasonable to the height of the tower, then I think that's probably a modification that we could be supportive of, but we need to see the details on that. The rezoning plan notes. This is something that I wanted to touch on. There are a couple of notes in the plan that speak to the sketch or illustrative nature of the rezoning plan, that it's really a best informed assumption of what they're going to do, but there could be changes. And we all understand that minor adjustments, adjusting the tie-in to a neighboring street, grades, things like that, these things definitely happen, and we know that. But the note is a little too broad, and you can see in the staff report that it really is a very all-encompassing type of note, such that uses can change, uses can shift around, and when we're talking about buffers and transitions in very specific places, that becomes a little problematic to just sort of say, we're okay with A becoming B and B becoming A. There could certainly be areas that might be more clearly defined, that something may be internalized. It doesn't have any external implication. If that's the type of thing that maybe could be changed up. So I would like to see that there's more of a comfort level with what the applicant is envisioning, but we'll continue to have that conversation as well. Last couple here is there are a few lots fronting on a BMP that is located in the southern single-family portion of this project, and it is a very, very tight area in between a loop road, and that area has, again, from what we're seeing at this level without the full plan, looks very difficult to put in the maintenance that it might need, as well as any kind of screening or landscaping that would make that more palatable. Otherwise, we're going to have half of the single-family homes fronting on a BMP. Now, BMPs can be done in a I'm going to say an attractive manner, although obviously that's subjective, but we have a strong concern about what that is. However, the ordinance certainly doesn't prohibit you from creating a situation that's not attractive for the homeowners. So, but we would recommend, because this is a conditional district, that hopefully we can work out a solution, and the applicants would be agreeable to that. And then lastly, you can see here, there are some red lines that are just drawn in some approximate locations, but the point is, and it's not looking for two, the recommendation is just that this is a very large residential area here, and this is a large one too that runs off of the page, and linking those two areas together with a pedestrian connection, not a street, would be a recommendation, just to tie this in to make it one cohesive project. This is just showing you on the upper left, you can see one of the first versions of the apartment development, and you can see one of the things I wanted to illustrate was sort of how you can see that there was a public street down the middle, and this is creating clearly a compact, tight, pedestrian-friendly situation. Certainly, you would have to do a lot more screening of the parking facilities out on the thoroughfare, which could be done. But I'm just offering that up as you sort of look through the T&D district and what it looks for, because we do not, the T&D is not a district that comes before you very often. So we just wanted to sort of illustrate what's possible. We'll come back to the schedule in just a second, and the applicants have their presentation. Are there any questions about the project at this point that I can help clarify?
Okay. No questions? The applicant has a presentation, I assume? Who's here for the applicant? This is eating into your 15 minutes, just gonna tell you. Please introduce yourselves.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Susan Irvin, representing the applicant. I appreciate the 15 minutes that we have, and we'll try to stay well within that, and we will stay well within that. The first thing I'd like to do is introduce the team. Up here we have Brian Genest and Sean Paone with Cole Genest and Stone, Ramey Kemp with Ramey Kemp, and we also have Steve Vinson with Magnolia Development. And I'd like to ask Steve to come up and just introduce the project. Then we will have Brian Genest talk very briefly about the land use plan, and Sean Paone go into detail about the revised site plan. Thank you.
Good evening. I'll be very brief. Our work on the plan that's before you has been ongoing for roughly the last 18 months. The plan's changed a lot as we've explored it internally and as we've explored it with staff and received their comments. I think we'll show you tonight in the course of our presentation that we've come a long way toward addressing in my view, all of the items that David pointed out as remaining open. As David told you, Phase 1 was approved back in 2009. I've personally been working on it for about 5 years, and we're excited now to be finally underway and looking forward to welcoming public supermarkets to Huntersville next fall. Our goals for this Phase 2 of North Creek Village were to make it a walkable, mixed-use, thoughtfully designed extension of Phase 1 with a variety of housing types, and done in a way that's that's consistent with the town's comprehensive plan. I think our team's done a great job of accomplishing those goals, and I hope you'll agree after we finish our presentation.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. I'm Brian Genest. I'm just going to quickly acknowledge what David Pete has just said about your 2040 plan and how it complies with what we are proposing. Obviously, there's history around us with the existing plan that Steve just mentioned, but the North Creek Village is located within an activity center, as we have all talked about. And here are some notes on the goals of the activity center to create a vibrant, pedestrian, accessible mixed-use area, which I hope you have seen we are in fact providing. And there is the location of the activity center. And here it is in macro. And then wanted to show you again just some images of the improvements to Highway 73. Obviously, we all know it's going to become more of a highway than it is today, and again, its importance to this piece of property right here. And here are just a few other images of that expansion. Again, transportation is a big piece of what we're talking about. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Susan.
Thank you, Brian. I won't dwell on this other than we went back and looked at our notes, and our initial meetings, we began with the town in July of 2020. We've been meeting consistently since then. We filed the application on April 1st. We were planning to come before you at the public hearing on the 16th of August. We got second round comments on the 11th, and we asked for a delay of that public hearing so we could address those. And we've been able to meet twice with staff and had numerous conversations with them to arrive at the changes that we are presenting to you tonight. The main thing that we want to do is just go over those revisions a little in detail. As David said, he is only allowed to comment on the plan that was submitted before the August 16th public hearing. So we are going to spend our time tonight updating you on where we are after our work with staff.
Good evening. My name is Sean Payon with Colton Nest & Stone. I'm going to go through the site plan again just briefly, as well as some of the revisions made based in response to some of the staff analysis comments. So this is the orientation, again, moving from north to south. I'm going to actually change the slide. So, I don't know if you could, oops, sorry. Which one is the pointer? And there you go, okay. So just to reorient, we're now looking from left to right as north to south. You've got Highway 73 on the western side of the plan. Black Farm Road is now on the south side of the plan sheet. And then kind of moving through the uses proposed on the site plan. Up against 73, you've got our focus on the commercial section there, which is a little harder to see here, but it's in darker orange. You then transition to the multifamily site here, which is the kind of slightly less dark orange, I guess, than what the commercial was, which again is in direct relationship to the higher commercial use proposed in Phase 1 of North Creek, which is, as Steve said, currently under construction. Just broke ground not long ago. As we move further south, you transition into the townhome section here, and then transitioning into the single-family detached, which is comprised of 50-foot and 60-foot wide lots. Again, moving kind of around the plan, again with the connection to Black Farm Road, with the detached single family in that location as well. in order to be more consistent with the adjacent land uses. Just pointing out some connection points. We have several connection points to Prosperity Church Extension, which is kind of shown in between Phase 1 and Phase 2. The proposed connection points currently align with what was shown in Phase 1. We also have multiple street connections for vehicular traffic, linking all of the different uses between commercial, multifamily, the attached residential, and single family, as well as 2 additional connections into the Phase 1 single family at the south end of the project, almost just north of that cul-de-sac in Phase 1, as well as the connection along Black Farm that comes into the existing Phase 1 townhome section behind the Publix. Kind of talking through some of the site plan modifications that we are proposing, again, after the August 16th date in response to staff comments. We generally kind of looked at those and broke those down into 4 main categories. So you had pedestrian connectivity, again, kind of in response to the TNDU. And as part of that, this is really showing a lot of the modifications that we're proposing here. But we broke up the center parking field within the multifamily section to allow for connection from Prosperity Church Road extension through the multifamily area to be able to connect to the proposed greenway. And so, as well as making horizontal and vertical connections through the multifamily and commercial areas to be able to link the proposed residential all the way up to the commercial on 73. As part of that additional pedestrian connectivity, one of the things I forgot to mention here is this is Rama Creek. There is a proposed greenway plan, and as part of our proposed improvements, we have an internal greenway connection that would actually link the Rama Creek Greenway all the way up to the commercial area. It's a little harder to see. It may be easier on your plans to see. It's a green dashed line that actually connects through. There are actually 2 locations that it comes up from Rama Creek up to the commercial, and then also from the Rama Creek Greenway to the Black Farm Road section. One of the other questions that needed clarification was the proposed buffers. And I actually have a cross section to illustrate a little bit more of the separation from the multifamily to the existing adjacent residential. But as it relates to the plan, David mentioned that we do have 4 different buffer types. The minimum requirement is the 20-foot buffer that is going to remain undisturbed along the property boundary, all along the existing adjacent residential. We've actually increased that to 50 feet in the higher intensity areas of multifamily and townhomes, and to 50 feet there. We've got a 40 feet on the southern section here, adjacent to the residential, and then 30 feet along the property that's adjacent to Black Farm Road, along with a 100-foot buffer at the intersection here where the internal street connection links to Black Farm Road. As part of that, some of the feedback that we heard from the community meeting was kind of making sure that there wasn't going to be this kind of cross connection of the proposed development into the existing adjacent residential. So we're proposing that any supplemental landscaping that's provided in those buffers prohibits or kind of defers people from actually crossing to the other property, making it more of a physical barrier. And so that's going to happen anywhere outside of those adjacent boundaries. Again, so one of the other comments made by staff was we are showing a 10-foot path on the backside of the 3 multifamily buildings, and whether or not that actually comprised of the requirements for a greenway. So I mentioned we're actually adding a second, more in keeping greenway path that's in the natural area that'll have a pedestrian connection through the multifamily area to that main linkage down to the Rama Creek Greenway. And then the last kind of primary identification was there were several notes that needed modifications. We are proposing modifications to those notes that Susan has provided to the town for review, and I think those are going to address the staff's comments. So the next one is we've got several conceptual perspectives. Just going to kind of run through. These are to give a visual identification of the connection of the greenway, which is shown to the left side of the image. This image is actually being taken from the commercial just outside of Highway 73 at the kind of northeast property boundary. You can see identification in the bottom right-hand corner. The point of that triangle is kind of the view corridor that we're looking at. So you can see this greenway connection coming, linking the multifamily into the commercial area. The next view is taken actually from 73, looking back, again, maintaining a lot of the existing vegetation with that stream section that David mentioned adjacent to the multifamily, as well as you could see that greenway path coming through there. But again, trying to maintain a lot of the existing vegetation, creating that natural buffer and separation between the multifamily and the adjacent residential. Lastly, this one is taken from the intersection of Prosperity Church Road Extension and 73. Looking back from the commercial, you could see the double row of street trees, a wider pedestrian connection path linking down Prosperity Church, creating that connection between the commercial and the proposed residential uses. Again, there was a couple questions about what the greenway may look like, what the stormwater BMP that's related to the single-family residential units, and as well as a little bit more description on maybe what the multifamily would look like. So we are proposing these precedent images. Again, a wide multi-purpose path. These ones on the left are related to the greenway. So you can see a wide multi-purpose path, a lot of existing vegetation. You've got the potential to do these park swing elements there, again, to create more of a pocket park, as well as this lower section here, again, more kind of seating areas, stopping points, areas of interest along the greenway. The center three images are examples of a landscaped BMP area, whether or not it functions more as a rain garden or an enhanced swale area. These are all giving you examples of vegetated areas that are both not only meet the requirements from a stormwater BMP standpoint, but also aesthetically pleasing to the adjacent uses. And then these on the right side are examples of the multifamily, again, creating pedestrian linkage connections between the multifamily buildings to the other pedestrian connections on Prosperity Church Road, to the greenway, the corner condition here where a building may abut up against a street intersection, and then these kind of pedestrian connection points here between uses. And then the last one is the cross section that I mentioned. So this on the west side, you're looking from the multifamily building to the closest residential use. So this is the multifamily building adjacent to the proposed greenway. So currently from the edge of that multifamily building, it's 236 feet to our property line. You can see this section here is actually that existing stream. There's 127 feet of stream buffer and vegetated area associated with that. To the actual first structure that's closest to the multifamily, it's an existing barn, and it's actually 571 feet away. To the actual primary structure or the house, it's 952 feet. And that's, again, that's closest to the nearest multifamily building being proposed. I think that is...
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. And lastly, I'd like to go over the in-plan results. We've talked about this in-plan program before. Lake Norman Economic Development Commission and a lot of universities and towns use this. It shows various benefits, and these are limited to just Huntersville, although we can expand benefits and look at Mecklenburg County. This is the number for the construction benefits, operational benefits, and the last slide I'd like to end with is the property taxes, showing you that taxes to Huntersville only are about $6,000 now with the vacant land, and they will be over $300,000 a year at the property value of $129 million. More importantly, the taxes to the county will be about $800,000 at this valuation. And one of the questions raised is school impacts, although not relative to zoning. It's important to know that when you have a mixed-use development like this with commercial and other uses, that $800,000 every year can go to help towards schools and actually more benefit than detriment as far as this project goes. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
16 minutes, we gave you the extra minute. Any questions of staff or the applicant?
I just have one quick one.
Commissioner Phillips?
Oh, sorry.
Okay, I was curious with the, commercial, have you guys lined up anybody yet or any talks? I know that's probably pretty preemptive.
No, we don't. At this point, we don't have tenant commitments. We've designed the plan in a way that we think works for a variety of retail and restaurant and commercial users, but we don't have any specific commitments. at this
Okay.
point.
So price points, is there gonna be any affordable housing components to it? Maybe senior housing, anything like that? Not Section 8, which is a different ballgame.
No plans for specifically for senior housing. We have not contracted with a builder yet, so we don't have any firm commitments on pricing.
Okay, so this is gonna increase, if this passes, the population on that side of Huntersville tremendously. I know we can't make requests, but something to consider, as a good neighbor in the community. Perhaps if this passes, you guys could provide maybe a satellite office for our police department, because that will add more patrolling for them. That's really the only comments I have for you guys. As far as the stubs, I hate stubs. I think they're ridiculous. I don't know if it's a town ask, because the people who back up to you guys, they don't really have any intentions of selling right now, correct?
As far as I know,
So this has got a great tree save. I don't know, maybe something for planning to consider, something to consider are those two stubs. Why even build them out? Just let them be trees, green space, and then one day if the people who own the other land want to sell, they sell. But I think something I've ran into in this, and it's not you guys' fault. I know the rules are the rules are the rules, but I think that you guys are trying your best with the green space right now, and maybe that's something the town could work with you on.
so that's a comment we've received from others, and we're certainly open to it. We're happy to dedicate the right-of-way and plant the area that would be stubbed, or leave it undisturbed. I think that's an ordinance thing we'd have to work with staff on, but we're certainly open to it as a
Okay.
developer.
That's all I have. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Commissioner Walsh?
I'm good now?
You good?
Just one quick question. You mentioned the multi-use path by the apartments, and then you said there will also be a greenway, I guess it'd probably be to the east, through the woods. We're talking about a paved greenway, correct?
Correct. The
Not,
idea was to
we're dedicating.
have a path on each side of the stream with a pedestrian bridge that would link the two.
Perfect, thank you.
Commissioner Hines?
Yeah, one quick question. Mr. Pete, you had mentioned about the TIA was still being reviewed. Can you give us an update on that?
Well, depending on how far you want to go into the details.
Not very far.
Steve Trott is here, but again, he's seen a version of it. Adjustments have been made. I think that, I don't want to get too far out of it, but I think that the TIA was trying to serve the town and maybe DOT at the same time, and I think that they're changing their tack a little bit. Certainly DOT is going to have their say, no question. But I don't know that unless Stephen offers differently, I don't think there's anything we can say about the TIA tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Munger?
Sure. And this might be a question for staff to start off with, but you had mentioned, and maybe I misheard it, that there were some homes fronting on the BMP, and I'm not seeing it here.
If it hasn't changed, this area here in between the circular road is a BMP.
Oh.
And so all of those homes in that southern half of the single family would be fronting that.
Okay. I guess I thought the blue BMPs, but I do see that now. Okay. Other question. In terms of the apartments, no on-street parking, is that something that can be modified, or you give me an idea of what's happening there?
There is actually so I can point to the street. So we actually have a street coming through right here that these are fronting on. So that does have on-street parking, as well as the one that runs in between the commercial and the multifamily on this side that also has on-street parking. it would be difficult to add on-street parking on Prosperity Church Extension. So that is basically just a setback that's going to have a landscaped wide area there in the frontage with a pedestrian sidewalk. But we did, it's a little hard to read, but yes, that modification says associated with the attached residential that there will be on-street parking in front of those units.
Okay. Last question. Staff made comment about the possibility of putting in a pedestrian creek crossing. Is that something that you guys would be willing to do?
So, so we actually have this stub straight, well, so I think it was directly related to the section here, but I think there was also a call out in other areas. Well, so we do have the pedestrian crossing here that links the multifamily to the proposed greenway that we're showing here. I think, but the staff had they put those two red lines on the plan. That was right.
Okay.
Yeah, so we do have this connection here, and then we do have this other connection into the phase 1 section. So I think that's where we have identified that would be the connection points.
Yeah, so is, you have the potential for a connection here across the thoroughfare, here across the thoroughfare, and then another one across the thoroughfare, and then this single family connects into this single family. So there's a lot of good from the center to the east. And so the recommendation was simply that all of this down here is only connected right here. And so, again, not looking for a street, but thinking pedestrian connectivity made some sense.
Yeah.
But purely a recommendation.
Okay, yeah, I'm just curious if you'd be willing to address that and put in an actual, not a road, a pedestrian crossing.
Right, so we are proposing that on the greenway to the plan north, adjacent to the apartments. I guess that's something we could, not something we've studied on the Black Farm right as a project, but it's something we can look at.
Yeah, I mean, we do have a parallel greenway extension that comes along that creek section, but
Right.
not directly going across right now. So I
Okay.
think, yeah, we're happy to review that.
Okay, appreciate it.
Any other questions?
Commissioner Boone?
Sean, my question to you is, how are you gonna address the cell tower?
Do you want to talk about that cell tower?
Yes, we, I guess one of the things we've been working with staff is trying to find the information about the cell tower because it's been there a while. It is 90 feet high. So, you know, a lot of cell towers now are much higher than that. So once we realized that, and that was actually, the staff found us that information. And once we have that information, we worked with staff on a modification that would allow a distance equal to or greater than the height of the tower, between the tower and residences. Anything else?
Thank you.
No other questions? All right, we'll close that public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next public hearing, number 2, is 8B. We'll open that up, conduct a public hearing on petition R21-11, a request by Trinity Capital Acquisition LLC and Mike Clapp to rezone 23.14 acres from SPCD to CBCD at 10695 Hambright Road. Mr. Simino, good evening.
Good evening. I'd like to enter the staff report into the record, Mayor, board members. So this is a request by Trinity Capital Acquisitions. The property is 23 acres. It's today zoned special purpose, CD, conditional district. And the site is on the northwest corner intersection of Hambright Road and Mount Holly Hunters Road. And it is just south of Burkert. You can see Burkert in the top of the aerial photography there. It's across the street from some commercial on the other side of Mount Holly Huntersville, and then on Hambright Road, there are some residences and vacant land and also a power line through that area. A portion of the track is also wooded, as you can see. The Huntersville 2040 plan calls for this area to be an employment center, and so this proposed rezoning is consistent with that. What you see on your screen is included in the agenda packet staff report, but I wanted to highlight the existing current zoning plan is SPCD, Special Purpose Conditional District. It's kind of indoor and outdoor recreation as well as all uses in the corporate business district.
It has 225,000 square foot building. The proposed rezoning now is going to go to corporate business, conditional district. There will be a warehouse with some associated office that are CB uses. The building will be just under 225,000 square feet. They are asking for a 40-foot parking setback modification. There is a case on your agenda later on tonight for text amendment TA 2110. If that is approved, that will already give them the flexibility that they need and wouldn't need that special permission. They also are looking to impact a swim buffer that drains under 50 acres, and that will require a text amendment, which is found under TA 2113, and that case will be heard, a public hearing on October the 4th. So just make sure we're all talking about the same locations where the modifications are being asked. Again, this is the site. Hambright Road is the long road that the building is fronting, and so one of the modifications they're asking for is to go from 80 foot down to 40 foot in this area. Again, a text amendment later tonight would give that permission. It will be landscaped per the ordinance. The other thing that they're looking for is at the back of the building, in this highlighted area here, is an impact on a swim buffer. And so there is a text amendment that would allow a impact on that swim buffer with a conditional district rezoning, and then they would have to mitigate that impacts as well. And with that, Mr. Mayor and board members, I'm happy to answer any questions, and the applicant is also here to make a presentation. So if there are any questions, I'll take them right now.
Any questions? Commissioner Bales?
Thank you. Just a quick question. Prior to this being zoned SP, it was zoned commercial business, correct?
Yeah, corporate business, that's correct.
Corporate business.
Right, so this is going back to
So we're
corporate
putting,
business.
okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Commissioner Boone?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Semino. I appreciate the presentation. During the neighborhood meeting, the representative from Beckett, I think her name was Mrs. Norwood, she asked to be informed of the production scheduling and the water runoff. Has that happened?
No, and I don't know if the applicant has any update, but Burkert, which is located just to the north of this, did ask to be in the loop on that, and hopefully the applicant can address that, any conversations they might have had with Burkert on that particular issue.
I think being a good neighbor, I think that would be ideal for them to do that. Thank you.
Okay. Is the applicant here? Has anything to say? Good evening. Please introduce yourself. You have 15 minutes. You don't have to take them all.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. I'm Cindy Reed with the Urban Law Group. I'm here to talk with you about TCA Hambright Industrial Zoning. Jack's done such a good job that we won't go back over everything that he said, but I would like to introduce you to Sherry Chafin and Macy Flippin from the Trinity Capital Advisors Group to tell you a little bit about their projects and about their company.
Good evening, I'm Sherry Chafin with Trinity Capital Advisors. The project, as Jack mentioned, is something that we're passionate about and excited to develop in the town of Huntersville. We focus as a company on office and industrial, and we're excited to take advantage of the robust industrial demand that we have right now and bring some jobs to the town of Huntersville. So I'm going to let Massey speak a little bit more about Trinity Capital.
I'm Massey Flippin with Trinity Capital Advisors, partner at Trinity. Thanks for the time, and I don't have a whole lot to add on what Sherry said, but just wanted to make sure everyone was aware that we are very much focused on quality development and attention to detail and thoughtful development as it relates to how our company operates. We've been in business, as she said, 20 years, developed and acquired roughly 23 million square feet, and through those years with my partners, 100 years plus of experience, 20 years personally, of doing just this type of development. I think we've really been able to hone in on what companies and employees want in environments and how to make them a little bit more special. And we try to set the bar when it comes to quality of developments and not just deliver a mundane project. And you know, obviously our reputations are all we have, stand behind us. So looking forward to this one being yet another high quality development and certainly happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Okay.
Sherry's going to go over a few sites that they have in North and South Carolina so that you can see a prototype of what their products look like.
On the screen, you'll just see some of the examples of the.
Can you speak a little closer to the mic?
Sorry about that. You'll just see some of the examples of our industrial development across the Carolinas. As Massey mentioned, we try to do a little bit more, focus on a lot of quality from the architecture to the landscaping, and hopefully that will serve us well here in the town of Huntersville. This just a brief location overview. As Jack mentioned, the corner of Mount Holly, Huntersville, and Hambright. Surrounding land use is Burkert, as Jack mentioned, to the north on the slide. And then we've already talked about 2040 plan. So I'll flip through these pretty quickly. Just the site plan showing the orientation. One thing that I think was important to point out is that we'll have industrial traffic with the trucks coming off of Mount Holly, Huntersville. The car traffic will come off Hambright, so those will be segregated, and I think that came up in a question in our neighborhood meeting. And then circling back to the other question, I think Commissioner, with respect to the neighborhood meeting and the question from Burkert, we did answer, our engineers here tonight, we did answer the question about the stormwater and the run, and how that would be designed to the satisfaction of the Burkert folks. So I think we're set with Diane on that. The rest of these slides are fairly redundant as far as what Jack, you'd already mentioned with the text amendment. So I think that covers it unless there are any questions, and I'll let Susan kind of conclude the presentation.
This is an example of an existing stream on site. I don't think that Jack's presentation had any actual pictures, but this is just an example of what the perennial stream looks like on site. Again, I would like to enter this into the record. I won't go over all of this because Susan just went over this in her last presentation, but this is a program that we use to show the economic benefits to the town, and it's used by the Lake Norman EDC and a number of cities around the country. And these are the type of benefits, you've heard this before, so I will not go over it again, but the basic line is that the benefits to the town from the construction of this industrial center are just shy of 21 million, and the taxes are 28,000 and change. If you have any questions, we're here to answer those questions. Jack does such a good job presenting. I'm not sure how many questions you have of us, but that's why we're here. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Bales, do you have a question of staff or the applicant?
I have a question of staff. Mr. Semino, in the staff report, under the transportation issues, it does state that some confusion. Is this going to be warehouse space or flex space?
So it was requested there be additional follow-up between engineering and the applicants to make sure we fully understand what the use is. That has occurred. It is clearly warehouse with some minor office, so that's been addressed.
Okay, thank you.
That's it. Commissioner Munger?
No, she got it.
Any other questions of staff or the applicant? Okay. Thank you. We'll close that public hearing. Our next public hearing, my understanding, will be continued, so we'll open that up. And do I have a motion to continue to October 4th?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, make a motion to continue the public hearing for petition TA 21-13 until October 4th, 2021 at 6 p.m. to be held here at the Recreation Center.
Is there a second? Commissioner Munger. Any discussion? All those in favor of the continuance? 6-0. We'll see you back on the 4th. All right, we'll open up our final public hearing. 8D is to conduct a public hearing concerning the approval of an installment financing contract with Pinnacle Financial Partners in a principal amount not to exceed $8.4 million for the purpose of achieving debt service savings by refinancing existing installment financing contracts, the proceeds of which were used to finance and refinance the costs of various facilities in the town, including the town's police station. Ms. Huffman, good evening.
Hello, it's good to see you again. We introduced at the September 8th meeting the idea that we would refinance 3 pieces of debt. We talked to our financial advisor. They had a very public process, invited 50 firms to offer proposals to refinance debt on our installment financing contract. An installment financing contract is comparable to a mortgage. On the installment financing contract we have at the police department, our current debt is issued with First Community Bank at 2.75%. We have the opportunity, the low bid proposal was to replace this with an installment financing contract at 1.25% interest. As the spreadsheet shows you, the term of the debt does not change, so it will be outstanding through the end of December of 2031. But at that lower interest rate, our net present value of our estimated savings is $229,000. Anthony mentioned earlier tonight the limited obligation bonds. We in financial vernacular call those LOBs. We have the opportunity to refinance that debt. It's currently outstanding at an interest rate of 1.775%. The interest rate would drop to 1.139%. Again, no change to the term, so the debt will be outstanding for the same length of time. But the estimated net present value of the savings on that debt would be $413,000. Those are the 2 items that you need to have a public hearing on. You're not required to have a public hearing on the GO, general obligation debt, but because that's an item on your consent agenda, I thought it was worthy that we would include that on this chart and show you that the proposal is that we will refinance that debt. The interest rate will go from a true interest cost of 3.2% to 1.6813%. That will save us an estimated net present value savings of $337,000 over the remaining term of the debt, which will pay off in June of 33. Save almost $1 million on these 3 items. Happy to hush and see if you have public who would like to speak on this item.
Nobody signed up from the public. Any questions or comments? Always like it when we save money. No prepayment penalty, right?
That's correct.
So if rates do go lower. All right, well, we'll close that public hearing and we're gonna take a 5-minute recess, which means 10 minutes, but let's be back here by 8:10 and we'll get to our other business. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone.
Let's move it.
I'm gonna come make sure you're I just wanted to see what your liability policy limits were.
Are we gonna bet?
So much for me winning.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you all for coming back. We'll go to other business, which our first item is 9A, consider a decision on petition R21-09, Caldwell Crossing Mixed Use, a request by Caprock LLC to rezone 38.1 acres east of Old Statesville Road, Caldwell Station Road, and south of Mays Road from corporate business and transitional residential to transitional neighborhood development, urban conditional district, for mixed-use development with commercial apartments and townhomes on numerous parcels.
Good
Well,
evening.
Mr. Richards.
Good evening. Brian Richards for the planning staff. At this time, I'd like to submit my staff report to the record. Just a quick recap. This project we went over a few months ago. As the mayor kindly pointed out, it's a conditional district rezoning from corporate business and transitional residential to TNDU CD. The project contains two types of two multifamily products, a by right or a market rate apartment complex and an age-restricted complex, as well as townhomes are on the perimeter, and in the southwest corner there's some commercial. They are asking for 3 modifications. The first is a footprint increase modification. That's limited in the TND district. Staff is in support of that. Last time we met, we're working with the applicant on solving a side yard parking modification. We've come to a solution with that. The applicant has offered to move their garages 50 feet back from the right-of-way and install garages as opposed to surface parking and evergreen screening. With that being said, staff is in support of that modification request. And the third, which is a new request that came about during the planning board, is a buffer disturbance modification request. As we know, buffers on the perimeter to remain undisturbed due to solving a problem in the northern part of saving the buffer in that area near the historic church and school, the historic school and church. They've shifted the grading plan south, which would then impact the grading for the thoroughfare adjacent to the WDAV radio tower. They have offered to replant that buffer at the rate prescribed in the ordinance. And with all that being said, staff is in support of that modification. They've provided staff with elevations and perspectives, as you can see here. And staff is in support of this. There's a laundry list of TIA requirements, the highlights being a new signalized intersection across from Coach Lane, the closing of Mays Road and Caldwell Station Road. They will also be offering to build, as part of this, roughly a quarter mile of the Church Street minor thoroughfare, as well as a quarter mile of the, what are we calling it, the Vine?
Well,
What are we calling it this week?
the inner or something, the inner loop or something. Mooresville
to Charlotte Trail. We'll go old school. And as you can see there are the road crossings. The northern crossing is in Cornelius. I've spoke to the town of Cornelius. They are aware of this closing and they're in favor of that as well, due to safety and a number of other reasons. As you can see, the 2040 plan supports this. There's a number of recommendations that support the plan. Took this to the planning board, and planning board member Gammon made a motion to approve. Passed unanimously, 9-0. And I'm here to answer any, staff is in support of this as well, and we're here to answer any questions if you have any.
Okay. Any questions of staff or the applicant? Commissioner Munger?
For the applicant.
Okay. Who's here representing the applicant?
Michael Cox with Caprock.
And Brian, any chance you can flip that back to the TIA slide?
Absolutely.
Thank you. All right. Whoever wants to answer. So, a number of different road improvements and things that need to be done. I'm just curious, do you actually own the land that's necessary to do all of these improvements at this time?
Hey, Lucas Shires with Colton Nest and Stone. So there is sufficient right-of-way to accommodate all of the improvements,
Perfect.
existing right-of-way.
Okay. And the only other question I have, my favorite question, at one point we had a discussion about the possibility of you reaching out to CMS in regards to the impact on the schools. Did you have a chance to do that?
I did. So I have spoken with a number of people there. The inroads led to a gentleman by the name of Dennis Lucario. Dennis and I have had numerous conversations about just possible ways to try to help in that. Basically, the answer that's provided me is to try to help them find a potential site for a additional middle school in the area. So we have been working on that, our team, try to see if we can find something that makes sense to send it to Dennis. That was his recommendation on how I could help if we wanted to. So we're working on that.
Outstanding. I appreciate that. That is all.
Commissioner Bales?
I'm sorry, don't go away. Because the sound in here is sometimes bouncy. Did you say that Mr. Lucario said he needed to look for land for a middle school?
So the impacts on the school, the middle school, if you look at the percentages, was the one that was, I guess, above capacity the most. And so he said that really there's nothing you can do other than, the town would need another middle school. And so I think more it was off the cuff, just if you have a site that would be suitable, we'd love to see it.
Okay.
Yeah, there's
Well,
a site
CMS
already.
has a middle school property identified
Oh,
currently, so that's why I was asking. I thought I heard it odd.
well, then we would definitely stop our search and not spend more time on it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Phillips?
So when we had the public hearing, I asked if there was a way to maybe do some kind of affordable housing component, or for seniors. Is that something you guys were able to work out?
Yes, Commissioner Phillips. So 20% of the units within the senior living facility will be set aside for those with income that are 50% below the area median income.
Thank you for that.
You're very welcome.
Commissioner Hines?
Here on this TIA thing, remind us, have you talked to Norfolk Southern about the rail crossings?
So we actually have our first bit of new news, not good or bad. Norfolk Southern has reached out as of this morning and let us know that by the end of the week, they're hoping to provide us with comments on all of our proposal. But as of right now, I have no comments from Norfolk Southern in terms of, how they stand on our proposal.
So if they choose to not close a rail crossing, then you're going to have to, I guess, Brian, will it be kind of administrative? You all will go back and forth if this were to get approved? Because it shows here they have to do a revised TIA.
Right, we would have to see what that revision would contain. Odds are we would be back in front of the board at some point in time for a modification.
Okay, thank you.
Did you ask Norfolk Southern which week?
Yeah, hopefully this one. He said.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions, comments? Motion? Commissioner Walsh?
In considering the proposed rezoning application 21-09 Caldwell Crossing mixed use, the town board approves based on the plan being consistent with policies LU 2.1, 5.1, 6.1, 7.1, 9.1, and EV 1.3 of the Huntersville 2040 Community Plan. It is reasonable in the public interest to amend the rezoning plan because the rezoning plan is consistent with the envisioned uses and development patterns set forth in the 2040 Community Plan. The town board approves with the following: increasing the first floor footprint to 8,500 square feet for a total of 12,500 square feet for each commercial building. Allow side yard parking between apartments B and C, E and D, and H and I with screening of a 50-foot setback of garages and evergreens. Allow the 20-foot buffer to be disturbed next to the eastern project boundary to install retaining walls and grade for the BMP, which is next to an existing radio tower, and address all outstanding red line comments from staff and any revisions by NCDOT.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Commissioner Munger? Any further discussion? All those in favor? That's 6-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to 9B, which used to be 9D. Consider decision on petition TA 21-09, a request by Strategic Capital Partners to amend the zoning ordinance, allowing the Board of Commissioners to approve modification of a swim buffer through a conditional rezoning process in the corporate business zoning district. Mr. Semino, welcome again.
Thank you, Mayor. Enter the staff report into the record. This is text amendment 2109, Strategic Capital Partners. This is a map of Huntersville's 63 square miles. The blue lines that you see are streams, and the blue that surrounds them are the kind of the swim buffer areas. And just to be clear, the text amendment is affecting the swim buffers that are intermittent streams and streams draining less than 50 acres, but it does not impact the Mountain Island Lake overlay. So as you look at the map here, I'm going to put on the dark blue lines. That's the Mountain Island Lake protected watershed area. And we have different zones, but in essence, basically, the western half of Huntersville drains into Mountain Island Lake, and so that has an additional layer of protection. So I just want to be clear that this text amendment is not involving that. The public hearing we'd have on October 4th will be talking about that, but I just want to be clear that this is not impacting those watershed protection buffers. Those are separate. The text amendment has not changed since the public hearing. Again, it would allow someone in a corporate business district through a conditional district rezoning to impact a intermittent stream and a stream that drains, a perennial stream that drains less than 50 acres. That's part one. Part two modifies one of the 9 mitigation options. That's option number 5, and just make sure that we don't double count the protecting of the hardwoods that would be required otherwise with our buffer requirements. So we didn't want to have that double count. So that's what the language is in section 2, and then section 3 is simply an adjustment to indicate that the water quality also is affected by this text change. The Planning Board and the Huntersville Ordinances Advisory Board did recommend approval of this request, as does the planning staff. And at this time, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Commissioner Munger?
I can make a motion.
Okay.
In considering the proposed amendment TA 21-09, the Town Board recommends approval based on the amendment being consistent with policies LU-8, EV-1, and EOS-1 of the Huntersville 2040 Community Plan. It is reasonable and in the public interest to amend the zoning ordinance because the amendment allows greater flexibility and an additional option to impact swim buffers subject to a conditional rezoning and mitigation.
Is there a second? Second. Commissioner Boone? Any further discussion? Commissioner Boone?
Thank you. I think it's important to note out that Rusty Rozelle from the Water Quality Program Manager from Charlotte-Mecklenburg Stormwater is in favor of this proposal.
Yes, that is correct. Sorry I didn't mention that, but that is correct.
Any other questions, comments? All those in favor? Seeing none opposed, motion passes 6-0. And so I want to thank staff for their work on this. Okay, so 9C is still 9C. And we'll consider a decision on petition TA 21-06, a text amendment request made by Jason Richardson to amend Article 3.2.1 E6 and Article 3.2.2 E6 of the Huntersville zoning ordinance to allow detached garages in the side yard of home lots in farmhouse clusters. Speak.
Good
Welcome.
evening. Thank you. I'd like to enter the staff report into the record. Just a short recap. This is a proposal to change the location allowed for detached garages in farmhouse clusters only. The other regulations for accessory structures and detached garages will still apply. Impervious area requirements, watershed requirements, and neighborhood covenants and restrictions still apply, although the town does not enforce those neighborhood covenants and restrictions. And if a farmhouse cluster does not have an opaque vegetative buffer at the time that someone is requesting for a detached garage and a side yard, then it will be required before zoning approval. And I'm just gonna move ahead a little bit. Staff is in favor of the text amendment because the regulations for farmhouse clusters already have significant requirements for screening, vegetation, open space, etc. And the ordinance advisory board for the town as well as planning board have recommended approval as well. This time I can take any questions you have.
Okay. Any questions? Is there a motion? Commissioner Munger?
I'd like to make a motion. In considering the proposed amendment TA 21-06 to amend Article 3.2.1 E, 6 and Article 3.2.2 E, 6 to allow detached garages in the side yard of home lots in farmhouse clusters, the town board recommends approval based on the amendment being consistent with policies LU 7.1 and LU 9.2 of the Huntersville 2040 Community Plan. It is reasonable and in the public interest to amend the zoning ordinance because it allows home lots in farmhouse clusters to minimize grading and maintains a generally rural appearance of a farmhouse cluster from a public street view.
Second.
Commissioner Boone? Any discussion? All those in favor? Seeing none opposed, the motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. All right, going to 9D, which used to be 9B, is consider a decision on petition R21-08, a request by the property owners of parcels IDs numerous to rezone the subject properties from corporate business to corporate business conditional district to modify the ordinance buffer requirements for the proposed industrial development. Oh, Mr. Priest got the night off.
Yes. We entered the staff report. He did all the work for that. And I just have entered into the staff report into the record. And so this is a significant project for corporate business. The proposal is for the buildings that you see, the 3 buildings that you see. It is possible that there could be some modification of some of these buildings, but the concept is to get a reduction of the buffer yard and also impact the swim buffer. What this plan shows you is the connection to the south, that's Alexandriana, and then there will be a new road that goes all the way up to the north and connect at the northern property line is Hambright Road and I-77, and the project that you see in the upper left-hand corner, that's the proposed Charlotte area transit parking lot facility. So these 2 projects will work hand in hand and create a new street that will connect Hambright Road all the way down to Alexandriana. So the proposed rezoning plan, it's over 1 million square feet of office, warehouse, and distribution use. As it is indicated now, it's 3 buildings. Again, some of these plans could change based on tenant needs, and that's noted in on the plan. It does include the new street frontage. It'll be from corporate business to corporate business conditional district, and the modifications are to have the 80-foot buffer reduced. We just amended the text to address that, so you might not have to see these in the future. There also is a disturbance of a I-77 buffer and the swim buffer. So the text amendment that was just approved will allow an impact of a perennial stream draining less than 50 acres. They will have to mitigate. That mitigation plan has been prepared, and we run that through Rusty Rosell of McClure County Water Quality. Staff recommended approval, provided that swim buffer, which was approved, is done. The updated tree mitigation plan submitted showing conformance with 7.4, which they are working on. Minor comments on the plan be addressed, and that all the TIA improvements that are recommended are added to the plan. The applicant has agreed to do that, and we stated all the consistency of the land use plan with the proposed development. And the planning board did recommend approval as well with the same staff comments. And at this point in time, staff will be happy to answer any questions that the town board has.
Any questions? Commissioner Boone?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion, please.
Okay.
In considering the proposed rezoning petition R21-08, Beltway 77 Industrial, the town board recommends approval of the amendment being consistent with the 2040 Community Plan Policy LU 1.1, LUS .1, LU 7.1, and the economical development goal to maintain the current percentage of tax revenue in non-residential uses. It is reasonable in the public's interest to amend the zoning ordinance because proposed zoning CB is the same as the current zoning, and therefore no additional uses are allowed due to the plan. The board recommendation is subject to 5 conditions. 1, that the swim buffer amendment is adopted and mitigation is approved. 2, the TIA is accepted and all required mitigation is commented to by the applicant. Number 3, updated tree mitigation plan is submitted showing the confirmation to Article 7.4. Number 4, the rezoning notes are amended to keep the general design of the buffer, the street, and the frontage conditions. Number 5, the minor comments on the plan, and the plan addresses the prior to final approval.
I'll second that.
Commissioner Walsh? All right, any other questions, comments? All right, all those in favor of the motion? Seeing none opposed, that motion passes 6-0. All right, we'll go to 9E, consider decision on petition TA 21-10, an application by the Huntersville Planning Department to amend the requirements of Article 7.5.3 of the Huntersville zoning ordinance to allow flexibility for CB, SP, CI buffers along public streets and rights-of-way. And you're still not Mr. Priest. Welcome back, Mr. Stefano.
Entered the staff report that Brad Priest prepared and spent quite a bit of time working on. There's not been any changes to the text amendment since the public hearing. And in essence, what we're doing is today the ordinance says in these 3 different zones, you can either build your building up to the street or have an 80-foot buffer. Under the proposed change, that 80-foot buffer goes down to 40 feet on thoroughfares, and if it's a street that's internal to a industrial park, it goes down to 20 feet. It's still landscaped per the ordinance, and staff recommends approval of this, as does the planning board. This should help reduce some of the rezoning cases that are coming before you. Multiple ones have come before you to reduce this buffer. So this goes ahead and just codifies it so they don't have to take that extra step. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Boone?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion. Considering the proposed amendment TA 21-10 to amend Article 7.5.3 to add flexibility to the CB, SP, and CL buffer, the town board recommends approval based on the amendment being consistent with the 2040 Community Plan Policy LU 7.1 and EV 2. It is reasonable and in the public interest to amend the zoning ordinance because the amendment would allow economical development, site design flexibility while preserving the statistics of the public street and the pedestrian realm.
Is there a
I'll second it.
Commissioner Walsh? Any discussion? All those in favor? Seeing none opposed, the motion passes 6-0. Now we come to our favorite. 9F is a quasi-judicial hearing. We're opening that up on Ranson Road subdivision sketch plan, request by Blue Heel Development to subdivide 12.42 acres of land located on Ranson Road to create a 36-lot single-family subdivision. So I know we have some people in the audience. I want to thank you all for staying. This is a little bit different, as I tried to tell some of you earlier, than the public hearings that you heard. I will read a bit of a script, and then we're going to swear you in. People have standing, typically, if they are adjoining landowners, okay? So quasi-judicial hearing is an evidentiary hearing in nature. The board must base quasi-judicial decisions upon competent, relevant, and substantial evidence in the record. Competent evidence is evidence that is sufficiently trustworthy and reliable, and that is legally fit and acceptable for consideration by the board. Speculative, irrelevant, or vague evidence, non-expert opinions as to something that requires an expert, and non-accepted hearsay evidence will likely not be competent evidence. Material evidence is evidence that shows that the standards will or will not be met. Evidence is substantial if it is relevant and regarded by a reasonable person as sufficient to support a specific conclusion. Speculation, unsubstantiated fears of the community, or vague assertions do not constitute substantial evidence. Quasi-judicial hearings are constrained by the standards in the ordinance and facts presented. Only parties with standing, including the applicant, local government, and individuals who can show they will suffer special damages, have the right to participate fully in the hearing. Parties may present evidence, call witnesses, and make legal arguments. Other individuals may speak as a witness, however, they will not be allowed to participate fully as a party, such as by questioning other witnesses or by calling other persons to testify. Witnesses must be sworn or affirm their testimony. General witness testimony is limited to facts, not personal preferences or opinions. Certain topics require expert witnesses, including projections about impacts on property values and traffic impacts. Individuals providing expert opinion testimony must be qualified as experts and provide factual evidence upon which they base their expert opinion. Mere conclusory testimony lacking foundation of the expert's opinion is insufficient to establish the existence or non-existence of a fact or conclusion. Even though the board may rely on other evidence, if it is not objected to, the board should rely on competent, reliable evidence in making its decision. I would like to let's call first our staff and the applicant, and then I'll call several people that signed up. So please introduce yourselves, and then I will swear you in.
I'm Matt Gallagher with Blue Hill Development.
I'm Matt Levesque with ESP Associates.
Stephen Trott, Director of Engineering with the town.
And Brian Richards, Assistant Planning Director.
Okay. You have a Bible there. COVID, just put your right hand on the Bible, left hand up. Let's see. Where's my swearing in? Okay. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence you shall give to the board in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Okay. Thank you. Now, we've had several people that have signed up. Patrick McHale, Susan Kinsler, come on up, introduce yourself. We'll determine if you have standing. David Self, Tim Harper, and Kelly Harper. The microphone will not bite you, so please come up and introduce yourself.
My name is Patrick McHale.
And you live adjacent to the rezoned property?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Please move to the side, please stay there.
Good afternoon, I'm Susan Kinsler, and I live adjacent to the property.
Great, okay. Who else is there?
My name's David Self. I live adjacent to the property.
Okay.
Tim Harper. I live adjacent to the property. My wife Kelly Harper had to step out. We have young children at home, so she had to go.
She's having more fun than us. Okay, so we're going to swear you all in, and then we will ask you after the applicant and the staff talk. We will ask you to come back. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence you shall give to the board in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. The parties in this case are entitled to an impartial board. A board member may not participate in this hearing if he or she has a fixed opinion about the matter, a financial interest in the outcome of the matter, or a close relationship with the affected person. Does any board member have any partiality to disclose or conflict of interest to offer at this time? I know Mr. Gallagher, he's had a couple of things in front of us. Other than that, that's about it. I'm sure a lot of you do as well. Also, any ex parte communications. The parties to this case have rights for any ex parte communication to be disclosed. Ex parte communication is any communication about the case outside of the hearing that may email communications as well as conversations with parties, staff, or the general public. Does any board member have any ex parte communications to disclose? Okay. Based on the disclosures we've heard, or non-disclosures we heard from the board concerning partiality and ex parte communications, does any member of the board or any party to this matter have any objection to the board's participation in this hearing? Okay. All right. Mr. Richards.
Good evening, Brian Richards for the planning staff. At this time, I'd like to submit my report to the record. As we spoke about, this is a by right subdivision, a Ranson Road subdivision located on Ranson Road. The zoning is neighborhood residential. As you can see here, it's primarily occupied by two single-family homes. The northern part is just going to be a portion of this for the subdivision. The southern part has one home and some accessory structures. The proposal is for 12.42 acres to be subdivided for 36 family homes, which is a 2.89 dwelling units per acre. The overall open space being provided is 1.6 acres. They'll be meeting their urban open space requirement, providing three types: a square, a plaza, and a green, for a total of 15,383 square feet of urban open space. Tree survey was done. They are meeting our tree save requirements. There's 80 existing specimen trees on site, and they're going to be saving 19. There are no heritage trees on the site as well. The applicant is asking for a block length modification. This came about as a direct result from the neighborhood meeting that was held back in March earlier this year. As you can see on the right-hand side, the original design of the subdivision had, I think, 6 or 7 more homes in a small cul-de-sac adjacent to the Timberview neighborhood. As I said, the applicant worked with the neighbors. They've revised the subdivision, and Caskway has been looped back down into Quercus. They've also offered to have 4 larger lots on the outer portion of the subdivision, as well as some additional open space. We do have that block length waiver. They're requesting the length to be 1,043 feet, and staff is in support of that due to the redesign and the better compatibility with the adjacent subdivision. As you can see, here's a context map of the area. In regards to the 2040 community plan, the project is located in the town core. You can see a number of supporting materials from the community plan. Our staff recommendation that we find the application is complete. The request is in keeping with the spirit and intent of the town's future land use plans as mentioned above. The Ranson Road sketch plan can be supported by staff subject to the following: that the block length modification request is approved. We work with the applicant in maximizing the amount of on-street parking, and other plan comments are addressed. And the planning board recommended approval on Tuesday, August 24th. I am here to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions of staff? Any questions for the applicant? Would the applicant like to present? No.
I think our presentation is just
Make sure you're on the mic, Mr. Gallagher.
Our presentation is pretty much a mirror image of what Brian just did, so I'm here to answer any questions. Matt will take any technical questions from the engineering side if there is any, so ask away.
Any questions of the applicant? Commissioner Munger?
Sure. One of the staff comments was, will any additional on-street parking be accommodated? Is that something you're looking to address?
Yeah, I'll let Matt take, that's a technical question, so to give it to ESP.
Yes, that is something. What we're showing right now is just the on-street parking along some of the open space areas. We will have additional on-street parking on the roads in between some of the lots where it will fit in between the driveways. Obviously, we don't have those locations yet, so something we're going to work with staff on. And then also, the right-of-way from the first intersection out to Ranson Road has now been widened, so there's room for additional parking along that whole street frontage, depending on where that need arises. So there will be additional parking.
Okay. Another question. Are there any opportunities for connectivity to our greenway to run through?
There's no greenway in the area.
Good. And the last one is more of a comment, and I'm sure the mayor will tell me I can't ask the question, but I'm going to. You sent out a letter on March 5th, 2021, detailing a meeting that was going to be March 18th, 2021. I find it interesting that you sent it to former Commissioner Mark Gibbons, former Commissioner Charles Gennard, former Commissioner Rob Kidwell, and former Commissioner Danny Phillips. You might want to update and make sure that you get to the right people.
Be good.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions before we ask Commissioner Boone?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I got a question about Timberview Lane. That's a private road, I believe. And what is the buffer between the Timberview Lane and the new lots? What's the distance there?
I'll have Matt to give the specific number, but we have a 20-foot required buffer, and then we extended the full, which are you looking at? The full rectangle there is now all additional buffer on top of the 20, but Matt will give the specific measurements.
Yes, along lots 5, 6, 7, and 8, which are the 4 larger lots in the back of the community. That was a result of the neighborhood meeting. There's additional tree save that has been added there. That's the kind of the square that you can see. Pointer working.
Yeah, the pointer does not want to cooperate.
At the top right,
Northeast corner.
yeah, northeast corner of the plan. Those lots are 140 feet deep there, and that distance from the back of lot to the undisturbed buffer is more than 140 feet. I don't know the exact dimension, but it's in excess of 150, 160 feet.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Bales?
In each of these blocks up here, if you will, are those both BMPs?
No,
What-
only the BMPs to the left for the northwest quadrant, open space, tree save to the northeast.
And that open space tree save, does that abut Timberview?
It's close. It abuts the required 20-foot buffer, and then there's some additional property on the other side of that that is central to Timberview. As a private road, it goes
That's
to
better.
There we go. It goes to the middle of the road, approximately, so it's property we're not purchasing or don't have in our contract to purchase, so it's our tree save, the 20-foot buffer, and then there's a little bit of the Timberview right-of-way. It's a prescribed 60-foot right-of-way, even though Timberview is probably only 14 feet wide.
Correct, but there's no connection onto
No
Timberview.
connection.
Because that was a concern that I had. Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right, well, let's have Mr. Patrick McHale come up. Welcome again.
Thank you. Thank you very much. As I mentioned before, I have a property adjacent to the property in question. And I've lived at where I currently do it, 15235 Timberview, for 36 years. So I'm one of the original landowners in that community. First and foremost, I want to thank you for letting me talk to you this evening. I know you work long hours and don't get a lot of thanks for it. So I appreciate what you do for the residents of Huntersville. And I've been a resident of Huntersville since it had 2,500 people. So things change. The item I'd like to discuss tonight is of utmost importance to our small community and also to the Greater Ransom Road corridor. Under the Freedom of Information Act, I was able to review some correspondence between Blue Hill Development and the Huntersville Planning Board. that occurred mostly in the last quarter of 2020. I wanted to applaud the Blue Hill Development for asking a lot of the right questions back in October of 2020 regarding covenants, deed restrictions, and agreements. And I noticed in the information I was reading that the Urban Group was requested by Blue Hill to do a deed search and a covenant review. And in that, they reviewed book 4126, page 375. And I don't want to bore you with a lot of details, but that's not the book and the deed restriction that our community is affected by. So the communications between the planning group and Blue Hill asked questions like, are there deed restrictions? And the answers were, they don't apply. And the urban group's opinion said that they didn't apply. But in fact, they were reviewing the wrong book, because the deed restrictions that we're under were written in 1982, not 1978. So that's the concern I have, is that I think that there was some influence early on that promoted some decision-making based on information that might not have been completely accurate. The deed restrictions we have, in effect, require a single-family residential dwelling on each lot, and each lot is defined by its perimeter.
There's no time.
In February 2021, Judge Hoover rendered that the 1982 covenant restrictions did apply to 15215, which is the property in question, and that the deed restrictions go with the land. The deed restrictions actually say that. The judge also reiterated that as well. In my opinion, the title review conclusion that the urban group arrived at was based on the review of the wrong deed restrictions. They were in the wrong book, on the wrong page. They should have been reviewed based on the 1982 deed restrictions versus the 1978. I would respectfully request that the town board reconsider their deliberations on the planning board's Blue Hill Development submittal until an accurate and valid covenant restriction review and opinion can be obtained. Additionally, the proposed development would severely impact the safety of the entire Ranson Road community, including Rosedale, Cobblestone, and Hudson Reserve subdivisions.
Mr. McHale?
Yes.
Are you an attorney?
No.
Are you an expert on traffic safety?
No, I just want to.
I'm just,
No,
we,
I'm not.
you know, I told you this was going to happen. So remember, we have to still deal with the facts.
Okay.
So are you a deed expert?
No,
Okay, all right.
no. I think that concludes my concerns,
Okay,
and I thank you very much for giving me the time
thank
and
you.
the opportunity.
Ms. Susan Kinsler? Excuse me? Oh, okay. Well, if you decide, come back. David Self?
I assume I can take this off while I'm speaking?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. So my name is David Self. and I'm an adjacent owner. The little green section where the tree save is at, I'm just north of that at 15212. My wife and I own the property. What I'm asking this board to do is to neither approve nor deny the request. What I'm asking this board to do is to continue the hearing because there is ongoing litigation between the 8 homeowners on Timberview and Susan Kinsler. That litigation is ongoing. It is pending in Superior Court of Mecklenburg County, and as of right now, there is no signed settlement agreement, and the litigation is not over. Every one of those, or this drawing up here that's on Susan Kinsler's property, violates the current CCRs, and that is why we are litigating, and that is why that is what Pat McHale was referencing. This, until we have ended litigation and a signed separation agreement, is wishful thinking. And I am asking that this board pause until the parties can come to an agreement or the litigation ends. That's what I'm asking it to do. The second thing that I have is concerns regarding the transparency between the communication of the town and the people on our street. In October of 2020, we got wind that there was going to be a development. Susan Kinsler would not tell us who the property owner or the developer was, citing a non-disclosure agreement. I don't know if there is a non-disclosure agreement, but she wouldn't tell us. So people in our community reached out to the town to find out who the developer was. Karen Martin, who lives on our street, who is a litigant in the litigation against Susan Kinsler, tried to find that information out. And I have some emails if you would be inclined to consider them. These emails were obtained through a Freedom of Information request that was sent to the town. And what I want to draw your attention to is that on November the 20th, there was a meeting between Blue Hill, and I believe ESP was there, Engineering, Surveying, and Planning, and Brian Richards and Sierra Salmonek. I don't know how to pronounce, but I did the best that I could, okay? And on November, and I had that email confirming that there was a meeting. I also have, from the Freedom of Information request, an email from Matt Mandel to the town showing a very detailed rendering that they were going to do. This was sent in November. On November the 24th, Karen Thomas sent an email to Sierra. I have that email as well. It's November the 24th. As per our conversation, I'm reaching out to ask for information that can be shared from the meeting. Didn't get a response. On December the 2nd, Karen followed up with Sierra. I know that you offered to let me know when the developers submit to the town, but my neighbors are asking me if you've heard anything, right? Have you heard anything? That's on December the 2nd, almost 2 weeks after a meeting and almost 2 weeks after ESP has submitted this drawing right here. Sierra responds back, likewise, nothing has been submitted yet. Okay, so I guess we could parse the language of what is submitted and what is not submitted. But when ESP submits plans to the town via email, and people in this community are asking, who's the developer? What are they trying to do? We should get straight answers. And how does it impact this directly? We were trying to negotiate with Blue Hill because we wanted to get something similar to this, but we couldn't. Why? Susan Kinsler wouldn't tell us who it was, and the town of Huntersville wouldn't tell us who the developer was.
So, Mr. Self.
Yes.
Okay. So I appreciate the passion. Okay. And you obviously have some emails, and you're welcome to put those in the record and so forth. what we're discussing here today is the approval of this development, and it's really boiled down to a block length waiver and on-street parking. I think, right, those two? So, do you have anything in reference to that? And we will take this and it will go into the record, but do you have anything in reference to those particular issues?
I will go back to the fact that this hasn't worked its way through the litigation process, and there is no signed agreement, and I would ask that this board withhold judgment until it's worked through the litigation or we have an agreement, and I'll hand this to whomever you need me to hand
Right,
it to.
and then also, do you have, I guess, whatever the litigation is, case number, you know, various things?
I could probably look that up on my phone if you give
Well,
me
you
a few
don't need it
minutes.
right now, but if you could give it to us and give it to the town clerk.
I will do that.
Okay.
Thank you for your
Thank
time. And also, I reiterate what Pat said. Thank you for your service. Quite honestly, I don't know how y'all do this, but thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Tim Harper?
My name is Tim Harper. I live at 15125 Timberview. I don't know, like Pat, we're the newest members there. We've lived there for just over a year now, and we've been in litigation for a year now. We saved for 20 years to buy our home, bought it, hoped this dream that we had to raise our kids in this community, and we've been in a litigation for a year. I'd just like to echo what Dave said, that we are in a lawsuit right now. We ask you to hold so that we can finalize this. We appreciate working with Blue Hill, but nothing is signed. Nothing is finalized. So I don't see how something can be approved when it's opposed to what the laws say there, but that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Kinsler, do you have any questions or comments?
Hi, thank you so much for letting me come. And I appreciate you letting me go last. You know, I recognize that this is a very emotional discussion between our neighbors, and you guys have your job to do. Blue Hill has their job to do, and I think we need to do the best we can. I had a long emotional dissertation I was going to give you, but I think I'll just stick to the facts.
Just that clarification, you own all this property?
I own the property. Can somebody come and point and show the part I own?
The northern part in the red boundary.
See that black line that goes kind of almost horizontal? I'm on that side. The town of Huntersville has a restriction in terms of being able to subdivide property on a private road. Timberview is absolutely a private road. There is no subdivision that's allowed to be done on a private road, and I've never tried to question that when I've come to the town. What I have done, though, is learn that over the course of, and like Pat, I've lived in Huntersville for 30 years. I've lived on Timberview for 20 years. And so, you know, I've been there a long, long time. And when I bought this property, it was for a number of reasons, but one was for an investment. So when I started to try to figure out, well, I'm gonna back up and say, I went to the bank for some reasons to try to lend some money that I needed at the time. And the bank basically said, we'll give you a loan on your house and your immediate property around your house. The rest of your 7 acres, we're not gonna give you any value associated with that as it relates to lending value. So at that point I realized, gosh, my only option is to subdivide. I didn't realize at that point in time that you couldn't subdivide on a private road. So once I learned that, I said, okay, that's out. I can't subdivide. Then I find out that Chris Farrell, who owns the property to the south or whatever, below that line, puts her property up for sale to a contractor. And at that point, I contacted Chris, and I said, what are you thinking? And she said, I'm selling for all my personal reasons, and I only want to sell this to a contractor for all of her personal reasons. And at that point, I started investigating, wow, this is a way I can actually receive some investment off of my property that I've had for 20 years, and I'm not going to bore you with all the emotional stuff about how hard it was to keep it, but it took a lot for me to be able to do that. I said, I'm not going to put a road on, I'm not going to try to do anything about the private road. There will be an ability to have an access outside of the Timberview Lane. And so at that point in time began to pursue the opportunity for me to sell my property, which belongs to me. At this point in time, I'm blessed. I have no mortgage on it. It is all mine, in conjunction with the sale of the property. I'm not breaking any laws. I'm not asking the town to allow a street to open up onto Timberview. To the contrary, I felt bad for Tim and Kelly because the previous owners knew what the plan was going to be for the property. They did not know who the developer was because I am under and still under a non-disclosure agreement with under that contract. So whether anybody believes it or not, it's the truth. So at this point in time, I'm just asking the town, keep the town regulations first and foremost. It is an emotional decision, but there is nothing that is preventing this from happening in terms of the codes. I've lived by the codes of the town. Again, I did not come to the town and ask for there to be any exception on private road, even though that was very disappointing to me. So, you know, I believe that those are the facts and that those are the facts that you should be using to base your decision. What happens with my personal litigation relative to my neighbors is my business and my neighbor's business. It's not the town of Huntersville's business. You are not responsible to comply with CCRs or make sure that CCRs are complied with. You are responsible for following the regulations of this town and making sure that we are not, as a community, going outside of those. I too appreciate all that you're doing. I apologize, I've never come to a hearing or any of your board meetings, and I can tell you, having been here for this one, my hat is off to you, and I just appreciate tremendously all that you do.
All right, thank you. Any questions right now? I mean, Mr. Richards, you want to address some of the things that we just heard?
Should we tap Emily in so she can tell us what we need to do?
Yeah, we're going to get
Okay, I didn't know.
Yeah, I'm here to answer any questions. I'm not privy to any of the private litigation that's occurring between the neighbors.
Okay, that's good. Ms. Sloop, do you have any comments on what you've heard?
I would just agree that private litigation is not what is being discussed here tonight. The compliance with the ordinance is what is being discussed.
Okay. Any other questions, Commissioner Bales?
This question, I believe, is for Ms. Sloop. In regards to deed restrictions, et cetera, that has no bearing here?
Not as in terms of whether or not there is compliance with the ordinance. No, it does not.
Okay, thank you.
For all those that are still here, you have the ability as landowners to ask either staff or really staff or the applicant a question at this time. So if anybody has those questions, comments? No, you can't, I'm sorry. No. Thank you, though. Any other questions, comments? Commissioner Hines?
Ms. Loop, I just want to make sure. So this is a quasi-judicial, which means basically a use by right. Can do it based off of the current zoning, can do what's before us. That's permitted under our ordinance. Before us also is 2 modification requests. So based off of what we're hearing tonight about
One modification to the block plan.
just one, okay, yeah, excuse me, thank you. So what you said earlier, based off of land use, so with them being in litigation, And whether or not, whatever happens with that litigation, whether or not she can actually sell it to do this use or not, is not anything we can consider tonight at all.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Obviously, if there was a later court order or something of that nature that would affect this development, then yes, but as of right now, no.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Because the lawsuit's public record and because we've already had one day in court, I do think it's important, though, for you all to know, and I've been on with my lawyer.
So Ms. Kinsler, we're really not debating that, okay? If you want to submit that,
What I'd like to submit is that there was a, part of the original lawsuit was a preliminary injunction so that all of this would stop immediately, and that was denied by the same Judge Hoover that, that Mr. Self mentioned.
all right, does the board have a clear understanding of where we are?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any other questions, discussion, motion?
I'll make a motion.
Commissioner Walsh?
In considering the Ranson Road subdivision sketch plan, we, the town board, finds the application is complete. The application is consistent with the 2040 community plan, including policies LU 2.1, EOS 4.3, 5.3, 8.3, T 3.1, and 3.2. The sketch plan complies with all applicable standards, although the following items must be addressed. The block length modification of Cask Way of 1,043 feet is approved, as the road design allows for additional open space on the east side of the development and creates a better transition to the Timberview neighborhood. Coordinate with staff to maximize on-street parking. No construction traffic should be permitted through Cobblestone Manor, and all outstanding red line comments from staff are addressed. I would like to make a motion to approve the Ranson Road subdivision sketch plan.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Phillips? Okay. As a reminder, the board is tasked with deciding, based on the evidence presented at the hearing before us, the proposal meets the applicable standards. The applicant meets the burden of producing competent material and substantial evidence that the standards in the ordinance will be met. The burden shifts to the other parties opposing the application to show by competent material and substantial evidence that the standards in the ordinance will not be met. The application was originally submitted to the planning board, and the planning board made a recommendation. Nothing that occurred at the planning board level, including the planning board's recommendation, is considered evidence that you can base your decision on. However, the planning board's recommendation may be useful to the board in identifying issues that this board may want to consider and evaluate based upon the evidence that was presented at the hearing before this board. We have a motion, we have a second. Any other discussion? Commissioner Boone?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I got to make a clarification here that when this hearing started, I did not mention that I knew anything about this. The names and the people that have spoke today refresh my memory, and I have spoken to two or three of these people when I drove out there to investigate this, but it won't have any bearing on my decision. So, Emily, I want to be sure I make that public.
Okay. All right, thank you for that. Any other questions, comments? All those in favor? Seeing none opposed, that motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hold on. Staff will draft and I will authorize this, sign a final written decision to reflect the vote and reasoning for this decision. The written decision will be provided to the applicant and the other parties with the right to such notice. Thank you, everyone, for attending our Ranson Road subdivision hearing.
Thank you.
All right, 9G, which is consider approving memorandum of agreement between the state of North Carolina and local governments on proceeds relating to the settlement of opioid litigation.
Yeah, so this memorandum of agreement is related to a national settlement in relation to litigation that was against opioid manufacturers and distributors. As a condition of the national settlement agreement, individual states have been requested to enter into memorandum of agreement with local government units with regards to how the funds from the settlement will be spent to help remediate opioid abuse. Huntersville, because we have over 50,000 in population, has been asked to sign on to the MOA for Mecklenburg County to ensure that the funds come at the highest dollar amount for the county.
Okay. Any questions? All right. Is there a motion?
I wanted to throw some statistics in here before I make this motion.
Okay.
I'm a volunteer at Queen City Harm Reduction, and they work with the populations that will be impacted by this. Just so there's some greater clarity, if someone participates in a harm reduction program, their chances of getting sober is 5 times greater than someone who doesn't participate. Through Queen City Harm Reduction, since January 2018, 4,893 naloxone/Narcans have been distributed in Mecklenburg County. Of those, 1,220 have been reported to be used to reverse overdoses. Since January 2021 through August of this year, there have been 1,307 naloxone/Narcans distributed and 309 reversals in Mecklenburg County. There are people that do not report reversals and deaths are not reported. These are successful reported numbers by participants. These numbers also include overdoses that have happened in Huntersville. In 2021 alone, there have been over 1,000 interactions between volunteers and employees with people who are using opioids. These are numbers just from the nonprofit I volunteer with. These numbers do not include data from other agencies, first responders, or hospitals, just one single agency in Mecklenburg County. The numbers also do not include non-reported overdoses from people who have obtained Narcan/naloxone on their own, which can be done at any pharmacy. While this lawsuit won't solve the opioid crisis, we do have one here in Huntersville. And I'm grateful that we are joining this, and I think it's a step in the right direction to right many wrongs and potentially save lives in the future. And with that, I would like to make a motion to approve the memorandum of agreement between the state of North Carolina and local governments on proceeds relating to the settlement of opioid litigation.
Second.
Commissioner Boone. Any discussion? All those in favor? 6-0. All right.
Motion to approve consent agenda?
Oh, it's about time you made a motion. Commissioner
Maybe to
Hines.
anybody else.
Anything else? Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor? 6-0. Any closing comments? As always, a lot happening in Huntersville. Thank you all. Have a good evening. See you in a couple weeks.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor? All those in favor, right?
All in
Okay.
favor, all in favor.
This is your first section of meeting.
See, here's the moral story. Always stick to your